The world is full of stories that defy explanation. Enigmatic events, strange occurrences, and unanswered questions that refuse to fade into the past. From vanished civilizations to unexplained phenomena, history is littered with mysteries that challenge the very fabric of reality. But what if some of these secrets are far stranger than we've ever dared to imagine? What if the answers lie just beyond our reach, locked away in time's shadow? For the next 3 hours, we will venture into the heart of the most bizarre mysteries ever to haunt our world. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the unknown. In the misty hills of northern Britain, where the wind howls through the remnants of ancient stone fortifications, there lies a mystery that has confounded historians for centuries. It is the story of the 9th Legion, Legio 9 Hispana, once one of the Roman Empire's most feared and revered military units. The location of their final campaign, and ultimately their disappearance, remains as elusive as the shadows that cling to the crumbling walls of Hadrian's Wall. In the early years of the 2nd century AD, the Roman Empire was at the height of its power. The 9th Legion had been stationed in Britain, tasked with maintaining control over the rebellious Celtic tribes that still resisted Roman occupation. By all accounts, the Legion had a storied history, distinguished in campaigns across the Mediterranean, from Hispania to the far reaches of Germania. Yet, in 117 AD, something inexplicable happened. The 9th Legion vanished. The historical record is frustratingly sparse. We know that the Legion was sent north, into the wilds of what is now Scotland, where the Romans were attempting to assert their dominance over the tribes of the Caledonian region. It was here, amidst the rugged terrain and dense forests, that the 9th Legion seemingly ceased to exist. No records of their fate remain. No burial sites, no written accounts from either Roman or enemy sources. It is as if they simply vanished, swallowed by time and history. For centuries, the disappearance of the 9th Legion has been a source of intrigue and speculation. The most commonly accepted explanation suggests that the Legion was annihilated in battle, perhaps by a confederation of Celtic tribes, united for a single, devastating assault. This theory is bolstered by the writings of Roman historian Dio Cassius, who mentions a great defeat in the north. However, Cassius's account is vague, and no further details are provided, leaving much to the imagination. But there are other theories, more speculative and, some might say, more fascinating. One of the most enduring ideas is that the 9th Legion was not destroyed in battle at all. Instead, some suggest that the Legion could have been disbanded, quietly withdrawn from Britain by the Roman authorities, perhaps to serve elsewhere in the empire. This theory is based on the peculiar absence of any Roman records or commemorative inscriptions in the years following the Legion's supposed disappearance. If the Romans had suffered such a catastrophic defeat, why was there no official recognition? Why no monuments to the fallen soldiers? Then there are the more unconventional theories. Some claim that the 9th Legion was lost in a way that stretches beyond the physical realm. Could they have been part of an ancient conspiracy or secret mission? Did they uncover a hidden truth so dangerous that it was wiped from history altogether? The idea that the Legion was involved in something more esoteric has sparked imaginations for centuries, though no evidence has ever been found to substantiate these claims. Another theory proposes that the 9th Legion was not destroyed in battle, but rather fell victim to the harsh realities of the frontier. The land was unforgiving. Savage weather, hostile terrain, and the constant threat of ambush from the indigenous tribes. Could it be that the Legion, without sufficient reinforcements, succumbed to the very wilderness it was meant to tame? If so, why then did the Roman Empire not acknowledge this tragedy in any official capacity? The lack of hard evidence only deepens the mystery. No physical remains of the 9th Legion have ever been uncovered. No bones, no weapons, no armor. The region where they were last stationed remains littered with ancient Roman military sites, yet none show signs of a battle so catastrophic that an entire legion could be lost. Even Hadrian's Wall, which once stood as a boundary between Roman Britain and the unknown north, offers no answers. As the centuries pass, the mystery of the Ninth Legion grows ever more elusive. What truly happened to them remains one of history's great puzzles, an enigma that defies simple explanation. Perhaps one day, new evidence will surface, or a forgotten scroll will be unearthed, shedding light on their fate. Until then, the Ninth Legion's disappearance lingers as an open question, an enduring mystery in the shadow of the Roman Empire's once mighty reach. As we leave behind the shadows of the Ninth Legion, a new mystery beckons from the depths of the ancient world. Beneath the warm Mediterranean waters off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, a remarkable object was discovered in 1901. At first glance, it appeared to be little more than a collection of rusted bronze fragments, clutter from a shipwreck lost to the ages. But as researchers carefully examined the pieces, a startling revelation emerged. This seemingly ordinary artifact was, in fact, the most complex mechanical device ever discovered from the ancient world, the Antikythera mechanism. A clockwork device, centuries ahead of its time, it would become one of the greatest mysteries in the history of science. This intricate gear-driven machine, dating back to around 100 BC, was found aboard a Roman shipwreck that sank at the crossroads of trade routes between the Greek and Roman worlds. The mechanism's purpose was unclear at first, and its discovery sparked questions that have echoed through the corridors of history ever since. At the heart of the mystery lies the device's function. What exactly was this strange mechanism used for? Initial theories suggested it was simply an astronomical calculator, perhaps a tool for predicting the positions of the sun, moon, and planets, or tracking the cycles of the stars. But as researchers have studied it more closely, a deeper enigma unfolds. The sophistication of the mechanism is baffling. Over 30 interlocking bronze gears were once housed in a wooden frame, with a system so intricate that modern scientists have only begun to fully understand its workings. In fact, it was only in the 21st century, with the aid of high-tech scanning techniques, that the full complexity of the device became apparent. The structure is often compared to a mechanical model of the solar system, a kind of ancient analog computer that could chart celestial movements with remarkable precision. It's a tool that seems to defy its time, a device that could have easily belonged to the 16th century, when the first mechanical clocks were being developed. But this was 100 BC, a time when the gears and cogs of the Industrial Revolution were still over a millennium away. How could such a sophisticated piece of technology have been created by ancient Greeks, long before the rise of modern science and engineering? What's more perplexing is that the Antikythera mechanism wasn't an isolated invention. It suggests a level of advanced technological knowledge that appears to have been lost in the centuries that followed. The Greek world, with its rich tradition of philosophy, mathematics, and engineering, possessed an understanding of the cosmos and mechanics that seems to have vanished from history. No other artifacts of similar complexity or sophistication have been found from the ancient world, leaving us to wonder, where did this knowledge go? And why, after the fall of the Greek and Roman civilizations, did it seemingly disappear from human history? The idea that the mechanism is a relic of a more advanced ancient technology challenges our understanding of the development of science. Was it the pinnacle of a forgotten branch of knowledge, perhaps a glimpse into a civilization's lost wisdom? And if so, could other pieces of ancient technology like this one exist, waiting to be discovered? Various theories have been proposed over the years. Some scholars argue that the mechanism was part of a broader tradition of mechanical engineering that existed in the ancient Mediterranean, but was gradually lost over time. This idea is supported by historical accounts of advanced technologies used by ancient cultures, devices that seem to be at odds with our expectations of what the ancient world was capable of. The Greeks themselves, after all, were responsible for the creation of the first automata, self-operating machines powered by water, steam, or weights. Could the Antikythera mechanism have been just one part of a larger technological revolution, one that was cut short by the collapse of the classical world? Another, more speculative theory suggests that the device could have been influenced by an even older, perhaps pre-Greek civilization, one with knowledge that transcended what we typically associate with ancient Greece and Rome. Some even suggest that the technology could have been passed down from a lost civilization, hidden beneath the layers of time and history. If so, then the Antikythera mechanism might represent only a fragment of a far larger and more mysterious puzzle, a key to unlocking the secrets of an ancient and forgotten knowledge that could have shaped the course of human history in ways we cannot fully grasp. As the years have passed, more and more questions continue to emerge. Some researchers have theorized that the Antikythera mechanism may have had additional functions that have yet to be understood. Perhaps it was not only used to track celestial movements, but also to predict eclipses or chart the cycles of the Olympic Games, an early example of how science and culture might have intertwined in the ancient world. The more we learn, the more enigmatic the device becomes. What other secrets might it have held? What else might it have been capable of? But perhaps the most tantalizing question of all is this: why? If this extraordinary level of technological knowledge existed in the ancient world, did it not survive? The Greeks and Romans, with all their advancements in engineering, mathematics, and astronomy, seem to have possessed the capability to create machines that were centuries ahead of their time. Yet, after the fall of the Roman Empire, much of this knowledge vanished, leaving only fragments for us to find, like the Antikythera mechanism itself. As we stand at the edge of this mystery, it is clear that the full story of the Antikythera mechanism has yet to be told. The knowledge that it represents, its origins, its purpose, and its place in the long history of human invention, remains one of the great unsolved riddles of the ancient world. Perhaps one day we will uncover more pieces of this puzzle, and in doing so, discover the true scope of ancient ingenuity. Until then, we are left to wonder, what else did the ancient world know that we have forgotten? As we leave behind the complexities of the Antikythera mechanism, we venture into a more curious and elusive enigma of the ancient world, objects whose purpose remains as enigmatic today as the day they were forged. These are the Roman Dodecahedrons, strange, intricately crafted artifacts that have been found scattered across Europe, from the windswept fields of France to the rolling hills of the United Kingdom and beyond. With their geometric perfection and bewildering design, they remain one of the most intriguing puzzles in the study of ancient Rome. A dodecahedron is a polyhedron with 12 flat faces, each a regular pentagon, and a shape that seems, on its surface, to embody an almost cosmic symmetry. But the Roman dodecahedrons are unlike any geometric object from the classical world. These particular dodecahedrons are made of bronze or stone and vary in size, with some measuring just a few inches across, while others can be as large as a foot in diameter. The faces of these objects are adorned with holes, ranging from 3 to 11 per face, each positioned with precise regularity. At first glance, they appear to be nothing more than strange relics of ancient craftsmanship, but their true purpose remains elusive. The first recorded discovery of these objects was in the early 18th century, when a number of them were unearthed in Europe, particularly in the regions of the Roman Empire. But the dodecahedrons themselves weren't common. Only around 100 examples have been found, scattered across a vast territory that includes areas once under Roman control. These objects are not mentioned in any surviving Roman texts, leading us to wonder, if they were so important, why were they never recorded in any written form? Theories about their purpose abound. The most commonly accepted explanation is that the Roman dodecahedrons were some kind of surveying or measurement tool, Some believe they were used to determine distances or angles, perhaps in relation to the Roman army's vast network of roads and fortifications. The holes in the faces of the objects, it is theorized, could have been used to help mark specific positions or map out specific geographic points, with the shape and holes functioning as part of an ancient system of triangulation. Other, more speculative theories have been proposed. Some argue that the objects could have been related to astrology or religious rites, perhaps used by Roman priests or mystics to mark celestial events, such as the movements of the planets or the positions of stars. The geometric precision and symmetry of the dodecahedron might suggest that it was seen as a symbol of cosmic order, a device designed to align human activities with the natural world or the divine. In fact, the ancient Greeks, long before the Romans, considered the dodecahedron to be a shape connected to the heavens. Could it be that the Romans inherited or adapted this belief, using the shape as a sacred object tied to their understanding of the universe? Another theory that has gained traction in recent years suggests that these objects may have served a more mundane, yet still baffling function. Some believe the Roman dodecahedrons could have been used as a kind of dice or gaming piece, with the holes serving as markers for numbers or symbols. Roman games were an important part of everyday life, and the dodecahedron's uniform shape and the distribution of holes on its faces might imply some connection to leisure or competition. But why then would such a symbol of cosmic perfection, seemingly crafted with such precision, be used for something as ordinary as a game? The contradiction leaves us with more questions than answers. But what makes the mystery of the Roman dodecahedrons even more compelling is the sheer number of unanswered questions that linger around their purpose. Despite the fact that these objects have been discovered in numerous locations, from Germany to Italy to Palestine, and even in areas well outside of the Roman Empire's borders, there is no historical documentation linking them to any known Roman activities, practices, or rituals. No inscriptions or markings have been found to shed light on their use, and there is no mention of the objects in the writings of Roman scholars or engineers, which leaves us wondering, why then did they leave behind such enigmatic objects? Even the materials used in their construction remain somewhat puzzling. The vast majority of the Roman dodecahedrons found have been made from bronze, but some examples are crafted from stone, an even rarer material for such objects. The difference in material raises questions about the intended value of these objects. Was the dodecahedron, in some instances, a more sacred or significant object, constructed from rarer materials as a sign of its importance? The mystery deepens when we consider the locations of the objects. Many of the dodecahedrons have been found in rural areas, far from the centers of Roman power, such as in the British countryside or in remote parts of Gaul. What was their purpose in these far-flung regions? Were they part of a localized tradition of knowledge or religious practice that remained obscure even to the heart of the empire? Or perhaps they were simply the forgotten remnants of an earlier, long-lost Roman practice that did not survive the centuries? The fact that the Roman dodecahedrons have never been definitively linked to any specific Roman activity suggests that they may have belonged to an elite class of society, to a sect or group with knowledge that was either hidden or lost to the passage of time. Some have suggested that these objects might have been part of a secret cult, an esoteric order of Roman citizens who used the dodecahedron as a symbol of their knowledge, their power, or their understanding of the cosmos. The lack of documentation, coupled with their occasional appearance in isolated or remote areas, suggests that these objects could have been part of a tradition that was passed down in secrecy, hidden away from the view of ordinary citizens. Yet, there is one question that lingers above all others. Could the Roman dodecahedrons have served an entirely different purpose, one so removed from our understanding of technology, science, or religion that we simply cannot conceive of it? Perhaps the dodecahedron was not just an object, but a symbol of a deeper mystery, one that continues to elude us even today. As we ponder the fate of these strange artifacts, one thing becomes clear. The Roman dodecahedrons remain a puzzle that history has yet to solve. Their purpose, their origin, and their significance are all still shrouded in mystery. For now, we can only continue to speculate, wondering if, one day, the missing pieces will be uncovered and the secrets of the Roman dodecahedrons finally revealed. But until then, the questions remain. What knowledge was lost, and what hidden truths might these geometric wonders still be guarding? As we leave behind the enigmatic objects of the Roman world, we turn our gaze to a figure whose very name is woven into the fabric of myth, legend, and history. King Arthur, a name that echoes through the centuries like the sound of a distant battle horn. From the mist-shrouded hills of Cornwall to the stone circles of the British Isles, the tale of Arthur and his knights has captured the imagination of generations. But behind the legend lies a mystery that remains as elusive today as it was in the earliest days of his story. Who was King Arthur, and what was the true nature of his reign? The search for Arthur's true identity begins in the ancient landscapes of Britain, rolling hills, windswept moors, and deep forests, where the veil between history and legend is often thin. From the ruins of Tintagel Castle on the rugged coast of Cornwall, where the myth of Arthur's birth was born, to the grassy knolls of Glastonbury, said to be the site of his final resting place, the search for the man behind the myth is intertwined with the land itself. Arthur's story, as we know it today, is one of chivalry, courage, and a kingdom united under the banner of justice. But the historical reality of his existence is much harder to pin down. The earliest accounts of King Arthur, written centuries after the events they describe, are often vague and filled with fantastical elements. The Arthur we recognize today, wielding the legendary sword Excalibur, leading the Knights of the Round Table, and engaging in epic quests for the Holy Grail, was shaped over time by poets, historians, and storytellers, each adding layers to the myth. But what was the kernel of truth at the heart of this enduring legend? The first mention of Arthur appears in the writings of the Welsh cleric and historian Nennius in the 9th century A.D. Nennius describes Arthur as a warrior who fought alongside the Britons against the invading Saxons. However, his portrayal is brief and lacks many of the iconic elements we associate with the Arthurian legend. It wasn't until Geoffrey of Monmouth, writing in the 12th century, that Arthur's story began to take on its more familiar shape, complete with a magical sword, a noble quest, and a kingdom ruled by the ideal of chivalric honor. But even Geoffrey's version is filled with ambiguities, and many of his claims are difficult to verify. Did Geoffrey create the legend from whole cloth, or did he build upon earlier stories that had already circulated among the Celtic peoples of Britain? Despite the lack of concrete evidence, many historians believe that Arthur, or a figure resembling him, may have existed in some form. The idea that Arthur was a real historical figure is bolstered by the fact that the name Arthur itself may have been based on a common Celtic title. In the 5th and 6th centuries A.D., Britain was a land of conflict, where the Roman Empire had recently withdrawn, leaving the island vulnerable to invasions from the Saxons, Picts, and other barbarian tribes. Some scholars speculate that Arthur could have been a military leader, perhaps a general or a chieftain, who rose to prominence during this tumultuous period, uniting the disparate Celtic tribes in defense of their homeland. In this scenario, Arthur might have been a warlord, a figure of real historical significance who was later mythologized into the King of Camelot. But the historical evidence for Arthur's existence is scant. No definitive archaeological evidence has ever been found to support the idea that a king named Arthur ruled a unified kingdom in Britain. The only proof we have are the scattered mentions of his name in medieval texts and the long list of places, real or mythical, that are said to be linked to his life. From Camelot to the Isle of Avalon, the geography of Arthur's kingdom is a patchwork of legend and speculation. Could these places have been based on real locations, now lost to time? Or are they simply the products of the imagination, shaped by centuries of storytelling? There are also those who believe that Arthur's story was not that of a single person, but a composite figure, an amalgamation of multiple historical leaders whose deeds were woven together over time to create the myth of the once and future king. Some scholars point to figures like Ambrosius Aurelianus, a 5th century Romano-British leader who may have fought against the Saxons and whose name bears a striking resemblance to the Latinized version of Arthur. Others suggest that Arthur could have been based on a variety of local chieftains, whose exploits were later fused together into a single heroic figure. This theory raises the question, if Arthur was not a single historical person, what does that say about the way we construct myths? And what role does historical truth play in the creation of legends? Yet another theory suggests that Arthur was not a warlord at all, but a symbol of a more abstract ideal, an embodiment of the cultural memory of Britain's past greatness. In this view, Arthur's reign represents the last vestiges of Roman Britain, a lost golden age that was doomed to fall with the collapse of the Roman Empire. The legend of Arthur, then, could be seen as a nostalgic reflection of a time when Britain was united, when order and peace prevailed, and when a great king ruled over a prosperous land. If this is the case, Arthur's story may be less about a specific historical figure and more about a collective yearning for a lost era. And then there are the more fringe theories, ones that delve into the mystical and the supernatural. Could Arthur have been a figure of divine origin, a king chosen by the gods to protect Britain from invaders? The magical elements of the Arthurian legend, such as the sword Excalibur, the Lady of the Lake, and Merlin the Wizard, have led some to believe that Arthur was not a mere mortal, but a semi-divine being set apart from ordinary men by supernatural forces. These theories suggest that Arthur's true identity is not to be found in history, but in myth, and that he was a symbol of something greater, perhaps an archetype of leadership or a representation of Britain's mythological past. The mystery of King Arthur's identity is not merely an academic puzzle. It is a question that touches on the very nature of history and mythology. Can we ever separate the man from the myth? And if Arthur was a real person, what can we learn from his life and legacy? Was he a leader who truly fought for his people, or a figure who was transformed by the passing of time into something greater than any one man could have been? As we stand on the precipice of this mystery, one thing is clear. King Arthur, whether a historical figure or a legend, represents more than just a story. He is a symbol of something much larger, the enduring human desire for heroism, for justice, and for the hope that even in the darkest of times, a leader may arise to guide us through. The search for the real King Arthur may never be fully answered, but the questions it raises will continue to resonate with us. Perhaps, like the Knights of the Round Table, we will forever seek the truth of Arthur's identity, even if it remains hidden, just beyond our reach. From the legendary tales of King Arthur, we now journey back into the ancient world, to a time and place where the line between the mystical and the technological begins to blur. Hidden among the ruins of Mesopotamia, where the ancient city of Babylon once stood, lies a relic that has puzzled archaeologists and historians for over a century, the so-called Baghdad Battery. It's an object that seems, at first glance, as though it belongs to a future age, a simple clay jar, seemingly unremarkable, yet one whose implications could rewrite our understanding of ancient technology. Discovered in 1938 by German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig in the ruins of Ctesiphon, an ancient city near modern-day Baghdad, the artifact is nothing more than a small cylindrical clay pot about 6 inches tall. Inside the pot, Koenig found a copper cylinder, and within the copper, an iron rod. The object was unearthed alongside several similar items, leading some to speculate that it was part of a larger group of mysterious relics. Initially, it seemed like little more than a curiosity, an ancient vessel of no particular significance. However, when studied further, something extraordinary became clear. This was no ordinary jar. The Baghdad battery, as it came to be known, seems to have been designed to function as a rudimentary electrochemical cell, resembling a primitive battery. When acid, likely vinegar or wine, was introduced into the jar, the metal components created a small electric current. The implications of this discovery are staggering. Could the ancient Mesopotamians, over 2,000 years ago, have discovered the principles of electricity? And if so, how was this knowledge lost to the ages? At the heart of this mystery lies the question of intent. Was the Baghdad battery a tool, an ancient artifact crafted for a specific purpose, or was it simply a byproduct of some other, more mundane function? The mainstream explanation for the object's purpose is that it was not, in fact, a battery, but rather an ancient storage vessel, perhaps a container for scrolls or sacred objects. Some have suggested that the copper cylinder may have been used as a form of simple electroplating, allowing the ancient artisans to gild objects with a thin layer of metal. This theory is supported by the fact that similar techniques were used in ancient Egypt, where electrum was employed in the creation of jewelry and statues. But the idea that the Baghdad battery was merely an accidental byproduct of ancient craftsmanship does little to satisfy the imagination. Some have gone further, suggesting that the battery could have been used for more complex purposes, such as lighting lamps or providing energy for primitive electrotherapy. The notion of electricity in the ancient world, so far removed from the modern era, carries with it an aura of intrigue and mystery. What exactly could the people of Mesopotamia have known about electricity? Was the Baghdad battery simply a precursor to the electrical technology that would one day power our world? Perhaps the most provocative theory surrounding the Baghdad battery is that it was part of a far more advanced knowledge system, one that was somehow lost to history. Could ancient civilizations have possessed knowledge of electricity far earlier than we realize, only to lose it over time? The idea that the ancient world was more technologically advanced than we give it credit for is not a new one. From the Antikythera mechanism, which we discussed earlier, to the Egyptian pyramids and their construction, there are countless examples of ancient ingenuity that still defy explanation. Could the Baghdad battery be part of this hidden history? This possibility is bolstered by the fact that similar artifacts have been discovered in other parts of the ancient world, raising the question of whether the knowledge of electricity was more widespread than previously thought. In the ancient world, civilizations were deeply interconnected. Trade routes spanned vast distances, and ideas traveled as far as the great empires of Rome, Persia, and India. Could the Baghdad battery have been part of a broader network of ancient technologies, a forgotten chapter in human history that was eventually lost to time? However, there are those who remain skeptical of such grand theories. Many scholars argue that the Baghdad battery was likely a simple device, with no greater purpose than serving as a form of ancient technology used for more practical or ceremonial purposes. The idea of an ancient civilization harnessing electricity may seem appealing to some, but the lack of further evidence makes it difficult to support such a theory with certainty. If the ancient Mesopotamians had truly discovered electricity, why is there no record of its use in the historical texts of the time? Why does the knowledge of such a powerful force remain so elusive? Still, the mystery of the Baghdad battery invites us to consider what we might have overlooked in our understanding of the past. Could it be that ancient civilizations were more technologically sophisticated than we realize? That the vast stretches of time between us and them have obscured the true nature of their achievements? In the case of the Baghdad battery, we are faced with a tantalizing question. If the ancient world had knowledge of electricity, why did it vanish from history? Some fringe theories venture even further, speculating that the Baghdad battery was not a simple artifact of ancient engineering, but a piece of evidence pointing to a lost civilization, a highly advanced society with knowledge that surpassed even that of Rome or Greece. Theories of Atlantis, lost technologies, and ancient global networks are frequently tied to such ideas. Was the Baghdad battery part of a forgotten legacy, one that was destroyed by time, natural disaster, or war? Could the answers lie buried beneath the sands of Mesopotamia, waiting to be uncovered by future generations? As we reflect on the Baghdad battery, we are confronted with the unsettling reality that much of the ancient world remains beyond our understanding. The questions it raises about ancient technology, knowledge, and the potential for lost civilizations are questions that may never be fully answered. Perhaps, in the end, we are left with more questions than answers, questions that challenge our assumptions about the past and the limits of what we know. As we stand at the crossroads of history and mystery, the Baghdad battery remains an enigma, an artifact that may one day shed light on the true scope of ancient human achievement, or perhaps remain as one more fragment of a forgotten past. But for now, it invites us to wonder, what else might be hidden in the ancient world, just beyond our reach? What forgotten knowledge waits to be uncovered? As we move forward through the labyrinth of history, we arrive at yet another mystery that has fascinated scholars and historians for centuries, a secretive, ancient cult whose rituals remain shrouded in obscurity. This is the story of the Mithraic mysteries, a religious tradition that once flourished throughout the Roman Empire, but has since been largely lost to time. In the shadowy corners of ancient temples and beneath the stone arches of forgotten sanctuaries, the enigmatic cult of Mithras performed rituals that have left behind tantalizing clues, but no clear answers. The Mithraic cult, which appears to have been at its height from the 1st to the 4th century AD, centered around the god Mithras, a figure whose origins can be traced back to ancient Persia. Mithras was often depicted as a youthful, heroic figure. His most iconic image shows him slaying a bull, a scene that has since become synonymous with the religion. This central motif, known as the tauroctony, depicts Mithras in the act of slaying a sacred bull, a moment that was seen as pivotal to the balance of the cosmos. But beyond the artistic depictions, what do we truly know about the Mithraic mysteries? Very little, it turns out. The religion was exclusively male, and its rites were practiced in secret, behind closed doors, in subterranean temples called Mithraea, which were often constructed beneath the ground in the depths of cities across the Roman Empire, from the streets of Rome itself to the distant corners of North Africa and the borders of Britain. These temples, many of which have been uncovered by archaeologists, were small, intimate spaces, designed to evoke a sense of mystery and reverence. Inside, statues and altars to Mithras could be found, and the floor plans often depicted a series of symbols and designs believed to represent the cosmos. What strikes the modern observer is the sheer secrecy surrounding the cult's activities. The rituals, described by some sources, were deeply initiatory, structured in such a way that only a select few could gain access to their sacred knowledge. Unlike other religions of the time, the Mithraic mysteries left no extensive written texts. What we know comes primarily from the archaeological remains of Mithraea, as well as fragmented references found in the writings of Roman authors who were often skeptical or dismissive of the religion. One of the most striking features of the Mithraic cult is its focus on initiation and the passage of stages. Members of the cult ascended through a series of levels, or grades, each associated with specific virtues and knowledge. These grades were symbolized by the planets, each level representing a different planet in the solar system, from the lowest grade of Raven to the highest, which was often called Father. Initiates underwent elaborate rituals and ceremonies, the details of which remain largely unknown. Some scholars believe that the initiates were subjected to trials that involved symbolic death and rebirth, experiences that marked the transformation of the individual, preparing them for the afterlife. Perhaps the most enigmatic aspect of the Mithraic mysteries is the complete lack of any central written scripture. Where other religious traditions, such as Christianity or Judaism, have extensive texts that outline their doctrines and practices, the Mithraic cult leaves us with only a scattering of enigmatic symbols, inscriptions, and artistic depictions. The absence of written doctrine raises a tantalizing question. Was the Mithraic cult truly an oral tradition, passed down through private rites and secrets, or was it simply a reflection of a more esoteric worldview, one that placed little value on the written word? What was the ultimate purpose of these sacred rites, and what secrets were kept hidden from the uninitiated? The closest thing we have to a definitive description of Mithraic rites comes from the mystery religion scholars, who have pieced together various accounts from both sympathetic and hostile sources. Some of the most compelling theories suggest that the cult was heavily focused on concepts of salvation and the afterlife. Mithras was viewed not only as a divine warrior, but also as a savior figure, guiding his followers through the trials of life and death. The cult's strong emphasis on life after death is evidenced by the frequent depiction of a banquet scene in Mithraic art, where Mithras and his followers share a meal, symbolic of their spiritual unity and their hope for eternal life. But why did the Mithraic mysteries remain so elusive, so hidden? Why did this cult, which spanned the breadth of the Roman Empire and attracted significant numbers of followers, leave behind so little concrete evidence of its practices and beliefs? Some scholars have speculated that the secretive nature of the Mithraic cult was a deliberate attempt to protect the mysteries from outside scrutiny. Unlike the open temples of the traditional Roman pantheon, the Mithraea were deliberately concealed from the public eye, often built beneath the ground or within dark, hidden chambers. Was this secrecy a necessary part of their religious experience? Was there an element of divine revelation that could only be shared in private among initiates who had been specially chosen and trained to understand the deeper meanings of the ritual? Another question that lingers in the air is why Mithraism, once so widespread, eventually faded into obscurity. In the 4th century AD, with the rise of Christianity as the dominant religion of the Roman Empire, the Mithraic mysteries began to decline. As Christian emperors, such as Constantine, consolidated power, the old pagan religions, including Mithraism, were pushed to the margins. The Mithraic cult, which had once thrived in secret, was slowly erased from history, its practices relegated to the shadows of forgotten temples. Could the Mithraic mysteries have been a precursor to Christianity itself? The similarities between Mithras and Christ, both are depicted as saviors, both have associations with the sun, and both are linked to themes of resurrection, have led some to speculate that the Mithraic mysteries may have influenced the development of early Christian beliefs. Was Mithras a precursor to Christ, or simply another version of the same archetype found in multiple cultures? Yet, despite the decline of Mithraism in the Roman world, the mystery of the cult remains. As archaeologists continue to uncover Mithraea and fragments of Mithraic imagery, new insights into this elusive religion continue to emerge. But even with these discoveries, we are left with more questions than answers. What was the true nature of Mithras, and what did his followers believe he could offer them? What secrets were hidden within the sacred rituals of the Mithraic mysteries, and why were they so fiercely guarded? As we reflect on the Mithraic mysteries, we are reminded of how much of human history remains locked in secrecy. How many traditions, beliefs, and practices have vanished without a trace, leaving only faint echoes behind. The cult of Mithras was once one of the most powerful and widespread religious forces in the Roman Empire, yet today it exists only in fragments, offering us a glimpse into a world of hidden knowledge and sacred rites. Perhaps, like so many other mysteries of the ancient world, the true meaning of Mithraism will remain forever veiled in the shadows. Or perhaps, in time, new discoveries will reveal what has long been concealed, offering us answers to questions we have only just begun to ask. As we step away from the secretive rituals of the Mithraic cult, we find ourselves facing one of the most iconic and mysterious relics of the Christian world, the Shroud of Turin. Draped in centuries of intrigue and speculation, this simple piece of linen cloth has been the center of debate, fascination, and religious reverence for centuries. It is said to be the burial shroud of Jesus Christ, bearing the imprint of his body, and even more so, an imprint that seems to capture his final moments. But how did it come to be? And what is the truth behind its origins? The Shroud of Turin measures about 14 feet long by 3.5 feet wide, a plain cloth with a faint, almost ghostly image of a man's body, his face, hands, and feet etched into its fibers. The man depicted bears the wounds consistent with crucifixion, nail marks on the wrists, a spear wound on the side, and bloodstains that match the biblical accounts of Christ's suffering. To many, this image is not just a representation, but a direct imprint of the man who once walked the earth, an artifact that could prove the veracity of the most pivotal events in human history. The Shroud's history, however, is not as straightforward as one might hope. Its first documented appearance came in 1354 in the French town of Liray, where it was displayed by the noble family of Geoffrey de Charny. The family claimed that it was the actual burial cloth of Christ, a relic of immense spiritual power. But questions quickly arose. How could a piece of linen, seemingly untouched for centuries, suddenly appear in Europe? There were no references to the shroud in Christian texts before this time, and no record of it being in Jerusalem or Palestine during the early years of Christianity. Despite these uncertainties, the Shroud of Turin became an object of veneration, gaining a place of reverence in both religious and historical contexts. In the 16th century, it was transported to Turin, Italy, where it has remained ever since. For the Catholic Church, it has become a symbol of Christ's sacrifice, a connection to the divine that transcends mere history. For millions of pilgrims who travel to Turin each year, the shroud represents the ultimate expression of faith, a physical connection to the divine. But as much as the Shroud of Turin is embraced by millions as a holy artifact, it remains a source of intense scientific and historical debate. In 1988, after years of mounting pressure from the scientific community, the Vatican authorized carbon dating tests on the cloth. The results were nothing short of astonishing. The shroud appeared to date back to the medieval period, with the fibers of the cloth dating between 1260 and 1390 AD. This contradicted centuries of tradition, which placed the shroud's creation in the 1st century AD, shortly after Christ's crucifixion. If the carbon dating results were accurate, the Shroud of Turin could not possibly be the burial cloth of Jesus. Yet, the mystery did not end there. Over the years, the carbon dating results have been questioned. Critics argue that the tests may have been flawed due to contamination from the shroud's history, or the fact that the sample tested was taken from a part of the cloth that had been repaired in the Middle Ages. Could the carbon dating be wrong? Or were the skeptics simply unwilling to accept the truth? In addition to the carbon dating controversy, other studies have raised further questions. The image on the shroud remains a mystery in its own right. How was it created? The body's imprint on the cloth appears to be more than just a painting or dye. It is as though the body itself left an imprint in the fibers, almost as if the image were burned into the cloth. Some researchers have suggested that the shroud's image could be the result of a chemical reaction involving heat or radiation, while others argue that it might be the product of an ancient photographic process, far beyond what would have been possible in medieval times. Yet, the most startling aspect of the shroud remains the man depicted on it. His wounds, his facial features, and the bloodstains all align with the gospel accounts of Jesus' crucifixion. How could a medieval forger, or any artist of the time, have known such specific details about a man who lived nearly 1,300 years earlier? Was the Shroud somehow created with knowledge that should not have been available to anyone in the Middle Ages? Or is it simply a coincidence, a product of the human tendency to create symbols of faith that align with deeply held beliefs? There are even more speculative theories, some of which venture far beyond the bounds of history and science. Some suggest that the Shroud could be a relic of supernatural origin, a miraculous artifact created by divine intervention. Could the image be the result of a miraculous event, an imprint left by Christ's resurrection, or even an example of divine radiance that somehow penetrated the fabric? Other theories suggest that the Shroud's creation may be tied to a form of ancient alchemy or even a forgotten technology, long lost to history. If the image was not painted or created in the conventional sense, could there have been an advanced technique at work that has since been forgotten? For centuries, the Shroud of Turin has occupied a strange and liminal space, caught between faith and science, history and myth. Its origin remains one of the most debated mysteries of the religious world. Is it a genuine relic of Christ's burial, or is it a medieval artifact crafted by an unknown hand? The evidence that exists points in multiple directions, and each new discovery seems to add layers of complexity to a story that has resisted resolution. But as we stand on the precipice of this ancient mystery, we cannot ignore the profound impact the Shroud has had on both the religious and scientific communities. For some, it is the ultimate proof of Christ's divine nature, a tangible connection to the sacred. For others, it is a reminder of how easily faith can intertwine with the mysteries of the unknown. And for all, it is an object that continues to captivate our imaginations and inspire questions that may never have answers. As the centuries pass and the Shroud of Turin remains hidden behind the protective glass of its shrine, we are left to wonder, what is the truth behind this relic? Was it created by human hands, or is it something far beyond our understanding? What secrets lie within its threads, waiting to be uncovered? As the mystery endures, it reminds us that not all questions have answers, and some mysteries may be beyond our grasp, leaving us to ponder what truths still remain hidden from history. As the winds of time sweep across the landscapes of Britain, one can still sense the remnants of a civilization that once stood as a symbol of Roman power and influence. The Roman Empire, at its height, spanned much of Europe, including the island of Britain, a land that was transformed under Roman rule. Fortified towns, villas, temples, and grand public baths dotted the landscape, evidence of a thriving society. But just as suddenly as the Romans arrived, they departed. In the early 5th century, the last remnants of Roman rule in Britain vanished, leaving behind a mystery that continues to confound historians. What caused the sudden collapse of Roman Britain? Imagine standing on the crumbling remains of Hadrian's Wall, the stone rampart that once stretched across the width of the island, marking the northern frontier of the Roman Empire. From this vantage point, you can see the rolling hills of Northumberland, where Roman soldiers once kept watch over the wild lands beyond. Yet, as the centuries passed, the wall began to crumble, as did the once thriving settlements and cities. By the end of the 4th century AD, the island's Roman infrastructure, which had been a symbol of power and order, had begun to deteriorate. Roads fell into disrepair, military fortresses were abandoned, and the once strong Roman presence in Britain began to fade. But how did this happen? The formal end of Roman Britain is generally accepted to have occurred around 410 AD, when the Roman Emperor Honorius sent a letter to the British cities, essentially telling them to fend for themselves. This abandonment is often attributed to a combination of internal and external factors. Rome itself, beset by barbarian invasions and internal political turmoil, could no longer afford to maintain its far-flung empire, and Britain, located on the western edge of the empire, was among the first to feel the effects. The Roman legions, which had kept the peace in Britain for over 3 centuries, were gradually withdrawn, and local British rulers were left to manage their own defenses. However, the reasons for the collapse are not as simple as this. Though the withdrawal of Roman troops certainly contributed to the breakdown of order, there are deeper and more complex questions about why the Roman presence in Britain came to an abrupt and sudden end. The Roman Empire, after all, had been in Britain for nearly 400 years, long enough for the local population to adopt Roman customs, language, and governance. Could it have been a series of gradual internal declines in the empire's control? Or was there something more profound, something sudden and catastrophic, that caused the collapse? One of the most compelling theories points to the increasing pressure from external threats. As the Western Roman Empire struggled against invasions from the Goths, Vandals, and other barbarian tribes on the continent, the Roman legions stationed in Britain were needed elsewhere. The island was not an isolated place. It was deeply connected to the empire's wider defense strategy. However, as the barbarians pressed against the empire's borders in the 4th and early 5th centuries, Rome's military resources became stretched thin. In 410 AD, the Visigoths, led by King Alaric, famously sacked Rome, further depleting the empire's ability to defend its distant provinces. Faced with these overwhelming pressures, the Roman government simply could not afford to maintain its hold over Britain any longer. But what if the collapse was not solely the result of external pressures? Some historians point to economic decline as a major factor in the fall of Roman Britain. The economy of the Roman Empire was built on a complex system of trade and taxation, but by the late 4th century, this system was beginning to crumble. The empire was suffering from inflation, a devaluation of currency, and a shortage of vital goods. The Roman elite in Britain, who had once enjoyed the fruits of imperial wealth, were now finding themselves increasingly cut off from the empire's economic resources. The once productive farmlands of Roman Britain began to deteriorate, and urban centers, which had thrived under Roman rule, began to decline. Without the financial and logistical support from Rome, the province of Britain became unsustainable. Others suggest that the collapse was the result of a more complex and cultural transformation. The Britons, having lived under Roman rule for centuries, had begun to assimilate Roman ways of life, but not entirely. By the 5th century, Roman Britain was already a fusion of Roman, Celtic, and Germanic cultures. The once divided Celtic tribes of Britain had come to share certain Roman ideals, such as citizenship and military organization. But this process of Romanization was never complete. The Britons, particularly in the countryside, still held on to their ancestral traditions and local beliefs, even as they adopted Roman technology and urban living. It is possible that, in the face of Roman abandonment, the native British population turned inward, away from the centralized power that Rome represented, and sought to rebuild local, tribal identities. This shift may have hastened the collapse of Roman institutions in Britain. Yet, perhaps one of the most intriguing, though often overlooked theories, is the idea of a sudden and mysterious environmental catastrophe. The period leading up to the fall of Roman Britain was marked by climatic shifts that could have had significant effects on agricultural productivity, disease, and the overall stability of society. Some scholars suggest that an unusually harsh climate, possibly triggered by volcanic eruptions or other natural phenomena, may have disrupted food production and caused widespread famine. If this theory is true, it would explain why the collapse of Roman Britain seemed so sudden, with people abandoning cities and retreating into rural areas. Natural disasters, combined with weakened infrastructure and strained resources, could have pushed Roman Britain past the breaking point. Still, even with all these possible explanations, there is no clear answer to why Roman Britain fell as abruptly as it did. In the absence of definitive written records, much of the historical evidence is speculative. Some have even suggested that a powerful political or military faction within Britain may have decided to sever ties with Rome, asserting its independence and ushering in a new era. This theory posits that the collapse was less a result of external or internal pressures, and more the result of a deliberate decision to break from the empire. The evidence from this time is fragmentary, and much of it remains open to interpretation. Archaeological digs across Britain have uncovered abandoned Roman villas, roads, and settlements, but few answers about why they were abandoned so quickly. In some places, Roman fortifications were abandoned and left to deteriorate. In others, evidence suggests that communities simply ceased to function as they once did. The mystery lies in the suddenness of it all, the abrupt collapse of an empire that had once seemed unshakable. Could such a large and complex society truly have unraveled so quickly? And so, the mystery remains. Why did Roman Britain collapse? Was it simply a natural consequence of the empire's broader decline, a result of external invasion and internal instability? Or was something more subtle, more profound, at work? A series of interconnected factors that brought the province to its knees faster than anyone could have anticipated? As we sift through the available evidence, we are left with fragments of history, each offering a piece of the puzzle but never the whole picture. Perhaps the true cause of the fall of Roman Britain will never be fully understood. Perhaps it was a combination of factors, a perfect storm of external invasion, economic decay, and internal transformation. Whatever the truth, the sudden collapse of Roman Britain remains one of history's most intriguing and enduring mysteries, forever locked in the mists of time. As we leave behind the fading echoes of Roman Britain's collapse, we now turn our attention to another great mystery of history, one that dwells in the realm of ancient texts, beliefs, and early religious history. In the heart of the early Christian world, there exists a profound enigma that has puzzled scholars for centuries: the missing works of early Christian texts. These writings, many of which were once considered essential to understanding the formation of Christianity, have vanished without a trace. How did they disappear, and what secrets might they have held? The mystery begins not with a single missing manuscript, but with the realization that entire volumes of early Christian literature are now lost to us. Early Christianity, with its spread across the Roman Empire, saw the composition of numerous writings, letters, gospels, and theological treatises that were foundational to the development of Christian doctrine. Yet, despite their importance, many of these early works have been lost, either destroyed, forgotten, or deliberately suppressed. And with them, countless ideas about the nature of Christ, the early church, and the theological debates of the time. Imagine walking through the dusty corridors of an ancient library, perhaps in Alexandria, the renowned center of learning in the ancient world. Scrolls and manuscripts lie on shelves written in Greek, Latin, and Aramaic, some of which were penned by early Christian leaders, theologians, and followers. Some of these texts have survived the ravages of time. Others have been lost to history. Among them, texts such as the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, and various writings attributed to early Christian figures like Papias, Irenaeus, and Origen are known to have existed, but today only fragments or later references to them remain. The Gospel of Thomas, one of the most famous of the lost early Christian texts, offers a tantalizing glimpse into the diversity of early Christian thought. It is a collection of sayings attributed to Jesus, some of which parallel the teachings found in the canonical Gospels, while others introduce ideas that are markedly different. The text, often considered part of the so-called Gnostic Gospels, presents a view of Christianity that is more mystical and introspective, emphasizing personal knowledge and enlightenment over traditional notions of salvation and resurrection. Yet, the Gospel of Thomas, like many others, was excluded from the New Testament canon during the early centuries of the Church. Why were these texts excluded, and what might their inclusion have meant for the development of Christian theology? The exclusion of certain texts from the biblical canon is itself a matter of great mystery. The formation of the New Testament was not a straightforward process. It involved centuries of debate, disagreements, and councils of church leaders determining which books would be included and which would be excluded. The reasons for this selective process remain murky. Some texts were excluded because they contradicted the emerging orthodoxy of Christian teachings, while others were simply lost or forgotten over time. But the question remains, were there texts that were deliberately suppressed because of the theological threats they posed to the established Christian order? Many of the early Christian texts that are now lost were written in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, a period of intense theological and doctrinal development. In these centuries, the Christian church was engaged in fierce debates about the nature of Christ, the relationship between the divine and the human, and the true path to salvation. These debates gave rise to a variety of Christian sects, each with their own interpretations of the faith. Some of these groups, like the Gnostics, embraced a more esoteric and spiritual understanding of Christianity, while others, like the Marcionites, rejected the Old Testament entirely. One of the great mysteries of early Christianity is how these diverse theological perspectives were eventually silenced or subsumed by what we now recognize as mainstream Christianity. The texts associated with these other early Christian groups, often considered heretical by the early church fathers, were gradually suppressed. The Gnostic texts, in particular, were buried for centuries, only to be rediscovered in the 20th century with the discovery of the Nag Hammadi Library in Egypt in 1945. This collection of ancient texts, which includes the Gospel of Thomas and other Gnostic writings, shed light on a once flourishing branch of early Christianity that had been lost to history. But how many more texts like these might have existed, and why were they buried? The most intriguing aspect of the missing early Christian texts is not just the mystery of their disappearance, but what they might have revealed. What knowledge did these writings contain that was deemed dangerous or subversive by early church authorities? Were they reflections of a Christianity that was more diverse and less monolithic than the one that eventually became the dominant faith? And how did the loss of these texts shape the development of Christian doctrine as we know it today? Some scholars speculate that the loss of early Christian texts was not merely a matter of neglect or accident. There are theories that suggest the suppression of certain ideas was a deliberate act of theological and political control. In the centuries following the death of Christ, the church was not just a spiritual organization, but a political one, with immense power and influence. Early Christian leaders, including figures like Constantine and later bishops of Rome, had a vested interest in consolidating authority and creating a unified doctrine. This process, known as orthodoxy, involved the exclusion of texts and teachings that were seen as threatening to the unity of the Christian church. Theological diversity was not tolerated, and works that promoted alternative views of Christ or salvation were often labeled as heretical and destroyed. But the mystery of the missing early Christian texts deepens when we consider the possibility that some of these works may have been intentionally hidden away. The Church Fathers, in their efforts to solidify their power, may have deliberately sought to eradicate or conceal these texts to ensure their version of Christianity would remain dominant. Were there secret libraries or hidden collections of forbidden writings deliberately preserved by those who wished to protect alternative views of the faith? Were certain texts hidden away to be rediscovered only at a later time, or perhaps never to be found again? The discovery of ancient manuscripts in recent years has only fueled speculation. The Nag Hammadi texts, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and even the ongoing excavation of early Christian sites around the Mediterranean have all yielded fragments of lost knowledge. Yet, even with all of these discoveries, we are still left with a staggering number of texts that have never been found. What knowledge has been lost to us forever, hidden in the sands of time, or buried beneath the decisions of early church leaders? As we reflect on the missing works of early Christian texts, we are left with a profound sense of the unknown. What could these writings have told us about the origins of Christianity? What truths or perspectives were lost to history in the quest to define a singular Christian identity? These are questions that continue to haunt scholars, theologians, and historians alike. Perhaps in time, more lost manuscripts will be uncovered, shedding light on the mysteries of early Christian thought. Until then, we are left to wonder, how much of Christianity's true beginnings remain hidden, waiting to be discovered? As we transition from the lost early Christian texts, we now venture into the heart of one of the most captivating military mysteries of the ancient world, the disappearance of the Roman eagle standards. These sacred symbols, representing the power and pride of the Roman legions, vanished without a trace during some of the most dramatic moments in Roman history, leaving behind a mystery that has baffled historians and archaeologists for centuries. What happened to the Roman eagle standards, and why has their loss resonated through history? Picture this: a Roman legion, with its soldiers clad in armor and discipline, marches forward under the banner of the eagle standard, the aquila. The eagle was not just a military symbol, but a divine and political emblem representing the might of Rome and its emperor. Each aquila was carried by a single legion, fiercely protected and regarded as the heart of the Roman army. To lose one of these eagle standards was not just a military defeat, it was a humiliation of the highest order. The symbol of Rome's power, pride, and unity was gone. The eagle itself was crafted from precious metals, often gold or silver, mounted atop a staff and bearing the likeness of an eagle with outstretched wings. It was a symbol of divine favor, the standard's presence inspiring both fear and awe. The aquila was so significant that its loss in battle was considered a national tragedy. The defeat was not simply about the loss of men or land. It was about losing the very essence of Rome's strength. The question, then, is why and how these eagle standards disappeared in two of the most famous episodes in Roman history: the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest in 9 AD and the Battle of the Carrhae in 53 BC. The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest stands as one of the greatest disasters in Roman military history. In 9 AD, a Roman force of 3 legions, led by the general Publius Quinctilius Varus, was ambushed in the dense forests of Germania by a coalition of Germanic tribes under the leadership of Arminius. The battle was a slaughter, and the legions were not only defeated, but utterly destroyed. The eagles of the 3 legions were captured by the Germanic tribes, an act that would have been considered an unimaginable dishonor to Rome. These eagles, which had represented the Roman legions for years, were now in enemy hands, and their loss haunted Rome for centuries. The question that arises is, what happened to these eagle standards after the Teutoburg disaster? Historical accounts suggest that the eagles were taken by the Germanic tribes, but there is no definitive record of their fate. Were they paraded as trophies of victory, or were they hidden away, lost to time? The most widely accepted theory is that the eagles were eventually lost or destroyed, either by the Germanic tribes who saw them as symbols of a bygone enemy, or by the Romans themselves in an effort to erase the shame of their loss. In either case, the fate of the aquilae remained uncertain, and their disappearance has left a gaping hole in the historical record. The Battle of Carrhae in 53 BC presents another enigmatic chapter in the history of the Roman eagle standards. Here, the Roman general Crassus faced a catastrophic defeat at the hands of the Parthian general Surena. Crassus, one of the members of the First Triumvirate, led an army of over 40,000 men against the Parthian forces in what would become one of the bloodiest defeats Rome ever suffered in the East. During this battle, Crassus's legions lost not only thousands of soldiers, but also their eagle standards. The aquilae of the defeated legions were captured by the Parthians, and for Rome, the loss of these standards represented a significant humiliation. The fate of the eagle standards from Carrhae is shrouded in mystery. Unlike the Teutoburg disaster, which occurred in the relatively recent past and was recorded by Roman historians, the aftermath of Carrhae is less clear. Some historians believe the Parthians took the Aquilae as trophies, while others suggest that the Parthians might have destroyed them as a symbolic act of their triumph over Rome. Some ancient Roman sources even speak of Crassus's son, who was captured and killed by the Parthians, being forced to watch the destruction of the Aquilae as a final insult. Regardless of the specifics, the loss of the eagle standards from the Battle of Carrhae became another symbol of Rome's vulnerability, one that was rarely spoken of in the Roman Empire. Despite the significance of these losses, the mystery surrounding the disappearance of the Aquilae remains unsolved. Ancient sources like the Historia Augusta and the Roman history of Cassius Dio mention the loss of these standards, but they offer little in the way of resolution. The lack of physical evidence, no surviving Aquila from either battle, only deepens the mystery. Were these eagles eventually recovered by the Romans? Were they preserved in some hidden location, waiting to be rediscovered? Or did they simply fade into obscurity, lost to time and the ravages of history? In the absence of concrete answers, scholars have proposed several theories about the fate of the Roman eagle standards. One possibility is that the Parthians and the Germanic tribes, after capturing the Aquilae, decided to keep them as trophies of their victory. These Aquilae, held as symbols of Roman military power, may have been displayed in the enemy capitals, serving as a constant reminder of Rome's defeat. If this is the case, then the Aquilae could have been destroyed in the chaos of later wars, or perhaps lost to the sands of time in a land that was not Rome's own. Others suggest that the Aquilae may have been taken by their captors but later abandoned or hidden as they lost their symbolic value. It is conceivable that after the initial moment of triumph, the eagles, once revered symbols, became relics of a bygone era, of little worth to those who had seized them. Over time, these powerful symbols may have been discarded, lost in the annals of history, perhaps buried in the ruins of long-forgotten settlements. Still, another theory proposes that the Roman government itself may have made a concerted effort to recover the lost Aquilae. Roman emperors, such as Tiberius and Augustus, sought to restore the dignity of the empire following the Teutoburg disaster, and it is possible that missions were sent to recover the eagles. However, such missions may have been unsuccessful, leading to further layers of mystery surrounding their fate. Ultimately, the disappearance of the Roman eagle standards remains an open question, one that continues to intrigue historians, archaeologists, and enthusiasts of ancient Rome. The Aquilae were not merely military symbols. They were powerful representations of the empire's might and legitimacy. To lose one in battle was more than just a military defeat. It was a profound loss of identity and honor. The fact that these standards, which once stood as the embodiment of Rome's power, disappeared without a trace, is a mystery that endures to this day. Were they lost forever? Or is there a hidden history yet to be uncovered? As we leave behind the fate of the Roman eagle standards, we now turn to a truly enigmatic marvel of ancient craftsmanship, one that continues to captivate the imagination and confound the minds of archaeologists and historians alike. In the arid desert plains of southern Peru, the Nazca lines stretch across the landscape like colossal cryptic messages carved into the earth itself. From the ground, these geoglyphs, some over 1,000 feet in length, appear as nothing more than abstract shapes and geometric patterns, but viewed from the air, they transform into something far more intricate. Enormous figures of animals, plants, and humans, meticulously drawn with precision that defies the capabilities of the time. What purpose did these lines serve, and why were they created on such a monumental scale? The Nazca lines are located in the vast Nazca Desert, a place where the sun beats down relentlessly and the wind blows across a dry, barren landscape. This region, known for its extreme lack of rainfall, has preserved these ancient geoglyphs with remarkable clarity, despite the passage of over 1,000 years. The lines themselves vary in style. Some are simple, straight lines, while others take the form of spirals, triangles, or perfect geometric grids. But it is the massive animal figures that capture the greatest attention. A spider, a hummingbird, a monkey, and the most famous of them all, a condor. These figures, which can only be fully appreciated from the air, raise questions that seem impossible to answer. How could the Nazca people, with no known form of flight or aerial view, have created such elaborate designs? And, perhaps more intriguingly, why did they go to such lengths to make these lines at all? The Nazca civilization, which flourished between 200 BCE and 600 CE, is thought to have created these geoglyphs, but the exact purpose behind them remains elusive. The lines themselves, drawn by removing the top layer of dark stones to reveal the lighter ground beneath, are often concentrated around the foothills of the Andes, where the desert meets the mountains. Their sheer scale and the effort required to create them suggest that they held significant cultural or religious meaning. Some scholars have speculated that the lines served as a form of astronomical calendar, with the figures aligning with the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. Others suggest they were part of a ritualistic landscape designed to honor deities, perhaps as part of an ancient ceremonial practice. One of the most widely accepted theories is that the lines were created for religious or spiritual purposes, designed to communicate with the gods. In the harsh environment of the Nazca Desert, water was an essential and scarce resource. It is believed that the geoglyphs, especially those that represented animals associated with water and fertility, were intended to serve as offerings or prayers to the gods in hopes of gaining favor and ensuring the life-giving flow of water. The lines may have been part of a larger ritual to honor deities that controlled the rain, crops, and natural cycles of the region. But while this theory offers a plausible explanation, it does little to account for the precise nature of the lines. If the lines were designed to be seen only by the gods, then why create them on such a vast scale? Why take the immense effort to design such intricate figures that could only be fully appreciated from above? This brings us to one of the most intriguing aspects of the Nazca lines, the mystery of their alignment with astronomical phenomena. Many of the geoglyphs appear to align with the solstices, the sun's zenith, and other celestial events. The Nazca people may have had an advanced understanding of the cosmos, and some researchers have suggested that the lines were meant to track celestial movements, marking the passage of time, seasonal changes, and important events in the agricultural calendar. In this context, the lines could have functioned as a vast terrestrial calendar, a giant map of the heavens, carved into the desert floor to guide the people in their farming and ceremonial practices. Some lines even point toward distant mountain peaks, which may have been important for their symbolic significance. Others, however, appear to have no specific purpose at all, other than to serve as a form of ritualized art. This raises the question, were the lines solely functional, or were they also intended to be beautiful, artistic expressions of the Nazca people's spiritual world? As we explore these more conventional theories, there are those who argue that the Nazca lines serve an even more profound purpose, one that may be tied to ancient knowledge lost to history. Some suggest that the lines were a form of ground drawing, an ancient practice that was meant to be viewed only from the sky. If this were the case, it raises the question of how the Nazca people, with no apparent means of flight, could have possibly conceived such large-scale artwork. Could the creation of the lines have been guided by a deeper, more mystical understanding of geometry and the natural world? Could they have been designed by a civilization with access to knowledge or techniques that we no longer fully understand? A fringe theory, often associated with the likes of Erich von Däniken, posits that the Nazca lines may be the result of extraterrestrial influence. This theory suggests that the lines, with their precision and scale, may have been created with the help of beings from another world, beings who could see the designs from the air and who may have directed the Nazca people in their creation. While this theory remains controversial and largely dismissed by mainstream scholars, it does provoke a fascinating question. If the lines are, indeed, a form of communication with the heavens, who exactly are the heavens in this context? Are the Nazca people's celestial figures representations of the gods, or could they be something far more cosmic, a call to or from otherworldly entities? Beyond the theories, there is a growing sense that the true purpose of the Nazca lines may be lost to time, a remnant of a society whose beliefs, practices, and knowledge have largely vanished. There are, however, some clues that suggest the Nazca people's understanding of the world was far more complex than we might expect from a civilization that lacked advanced technology. The precision with which the lines were made, the knowledge of astronomy, and the apparent relationship between the lines and the natural world point to a people deeply attuned to the rhythms of the earth and sky. Whether the lines were made to communicate with the gods, mark celestial events, or simply create a lasting testament to their worldview, we may never know for certain. And so, the Nazca lines remain an enigma, a testament to the ingenuity, spirituality, and mystery of the ancient world. As we continue to explore the purpose of these magnificent geoglyphs, we are reminded that the past holds many secrets, and some of those secrets may never be fully uncovered. Perhaps the Nazca people, in their wisdom, created these lines not just as a means of communication, but as a way of connecting to something far beyond the earthly realm. As we look upon these ancient lines etched into the desert floor, we are left with one final question. What message might the Nazca have left for us, and what might still be hidden within the vast open expanse of the desert? As we leave behind the mysteries of the Nazca lines, we now turn our attention to a different, yet equally haunting, form of ancient communication, one that invokes fear, superstition, and a deep connection to the unseen forces believed to shape the fate of humankind. Deep within the vast expanse of the Roman Empire, a shadowy tradition thrived, one that we now know as the Curse Tablets. These small, inscribed sheets of lead, bronze, or other materials were used by Romans seeking to invoke the wrath of the gods upon their enemies or competitors, often in the most personal and vengeful of ways. Picture, if you will, the dimly lit streets of ancient Rome, bustling with life yet fraught with unseen tensions. The air is thick with whispers of political intrigue, social rivalry, and personal vendettas. It is in this backdrop that the Curse Tablets emerged, small, seemingly innocuous objects that held the power to shape destinies and lives. These tablets were typically inscribed with short, cryptic curses, designed to call upon the gods or supernatural forces to punish those who had wronged the individual who inscribed them. The curses were often directed at personal enemies, rivals in business, or those who had committed acts of betrayal or injustice. The physical nature of the Curse Tablets is simple yet striking. Most were made from lead, a material that could be easily inscribed upon, yet heavy enough to carry a sense of weight and permanence. The inscriptions were usually brief, consisting of a simple prayer or curse, often invoking the names of gods or spirits associated with the underworld or vengeance. These gods were thought to have the power to influence the fates of men, and the tablets were seen as a means of securing divine retribution for the wronged party. Sometimes the curses were written in Latin, but at other times, Greek or other languages were used, adding an air of secrecy and mystery to the whole practice. But what is truly fascinating about these curse tablets is not just the eerie nature of their inscriptions, but the larger social and cultural context in which they were created. They offer a rare glimpse into the darker aspects of Roman society, where the line between the sacred and the profane, the legal and the illegal, was often blurred. The use of curse tablets was, in a sense, a form of social protest, a way for individuals to express frustration with the limitations of the law, to seek justice outside the bounds of the legal system, and to demand retribution when the gods were thought to be the only ones capable of delivering true justice. The practice of using curse tablets was not limited to any single region of the Roman Empire, but rather was spread throughout its vast territories, from the streets of Rome itself to the far reaches of Britain and Palestine. The tablets were often placed in locations believed to be charged with supernatural power, such as wells, graves, or temples, where they were thought to be most likely to attract the attention of the gods. Some tablets were even buried with the intention of ensuring that the curse would persist beyond death, as though the influence of the gods would extend into the afterlife. The people who used these tablets were, in many cases, ordinary citizens, laborers, slaves, and merchants, seeking to settle disputes or gain favor in a competitive world. But there were also those who wielded the curse tablet as a tool of power and manipulation. Political leaders, for example, might use them to summon divine retribution upon their rivals, or even to secure favors from the gods in times of crisis. These tablets could be found in both the personal and public spheres, used by individuals seeking personal justice, as well as by groups seeking to sway public opinion or gain political advantage. Among the most striking aspects of the curse tablets is their pervasive sense of desperation. These were not just idle threats or empty words. They were earnest calls for intervention from forces that were believed to be far beyond human comprehension. The tablets reflect the fear and uncertainty that permeated Roman society, where the gods were often seen as capricious and unpredictable, and where the ability to control one's fate was in the hands of forces much greater than any mortal. The desire for control and the willingness to appeal to the divine to settle earthly matters provides a chilling window into the psyche of those who lived in this complex and often brutal world. But despite the relatively common use of curse tablets in the Roman world, their exact purpose and effectiveness remain shrouded in mystery. Were they simply a way for people to vent their frustrations and seek a sense of justice in an unjust world, or did they hold actual power? Did the gods truly listen to these calls for vengeance, or were the curse tablets merely psychological tools, a form of catharsis for those who felt powerless in the face of social or personal turmoil? Over the years, many curse tablets have been discovered in excavations of Roman sites, particularly in places such as the ancient city of Bath in Britain, as well as in the ruins of Pompeii and Herculaneum. Some of these tablets were so specific in their curses that they mention particular people, places, or events, giving us a glimpse into the minutiae of Roman daily life. The details are often strikingly personal. One tablet might ask for a person's legs to be paralyzed, while another might ask for someone to be struck blind. These curses were not abstract or generalized. They were aimed directly at individuals, often with a level of detail that suggests the writer knew their enemy intimately. The most compelling and eerie aspect of these tablets is the apparent belief in their efficacy. Ancient sources describe the act of invoking a curse as a powerful and serious act, one that could have real consequences. In some cases, it is even believed that the curse was considered so potent that the recipient of the curse might suffer misfortune or illness, as if the gods were indeed listening and taking action. Yet, whether or not this belief was grounded in any tangible effect remains uncertain. There are, of course, those who have suggested more speculative theories about the curse tablets, ones that venture into the realm of the supernatural. Some suggest that the practice of cursing through these tablets could be seen as a form of ancient magic, channeling powers that were believed to exist beyond human comprehension. The act of writing out the curse, the physical nature of the tablet, and the deliberate placement of the tablet in places of spiritual significance could have been seen as a ritualistic act that held power over fate itself. Others propose that the widespread use of curse tablets reflects a deeper cultural phenomenon, the belief that the gods could not be trusted to act on their own, and that humans needed to take matters into their own hands. In this way, the curse tablets might have been seen as a form of divine manipulation, a way to bend the will of the gods toward human desires and intentions. Were the Romans truly able to control the gods in this way, or was the practice merely a desperate attempt to feel in control of a world that was often uncontrollable? The fate of the curse tablets themselves is another layer of mystery. While many have been discovered, countless others were undoubtedly lost to time, buried under centuries of history, swept away by the passage of time or the changing sands of fate. What do these surviving tablets tell us about the fears and aspirations of the people who used them? And what else might remain hidden in the ruins of ancient cities, waiting to be uncovered? The curse tablets of the Roman Empire present us with a glimpse into a world that was both profoundly spiritual and deeply troubled. Their mystery endures because, even today, we are left to wonder, were these tablets simply symbolic gestures of frustration, or did they represent a deeper, more powerful connection to the forces of fate? And, most haunting of all, how many curses are still lingering out there, waiting for the divine or the unseen forces of history to answer? As we transition from the curses of ancient Rome, we now delve into the turbulent world of a fierce queen who rose against the might of the Roman Empire, only to vanish from the pages of history in a manner as mysterious as her life. Boudica, the queen of the Iceni tribe in Britain, is remembered as a symbol of defiance and rebellion. Yet, despite her legendary status and the brutal war she led, her final fate remains an unresolved enigma. What happened to Boudica after her final stand against Rome? Why did a woman who once commanded such strength and influence slip so quietly into the depths of history? Imagine the scene. It is the year 60 or 61 AD, and the streets of the Roman settlement of Camulodunum, modern-day Colchester, are ablaze. The cries of the Iceni warriors and their allies fill the air as Boudica's forces, numbering in the tens of thousands, lay waste to Roman towns, fighting for vengeance against a brutal empire that had wronged her people. The Romans, unprepared for the ferocity of the revolt, fall back, unable to halt the advance of Boudica's forces. This is a woman whose fury matched the gods of old, and her warriors, motivated by grief and a burning desire for freedom, brought terror to the heart of Roman Britain. But as quickly as her revolt began, it faltered. After a series of early victories, Boudica's forces faced their ultimate defeat at the Battle of Watling Street, where they were decisively crushed by the Roman legions under the command of Governor Gaius Suetonius Paulinus. It was here that Boudica's legend was cemented, not just as a leader of a rebellion, but as a martyr for her people's cause. After the battle, historical accounts diverge on what happened to her. Some suggest she took her own life to avoid capture, while others propose that she simply vanished from the historical record. What followed her final defeat? Why is it that, after such a dramatic conflict, the story of Boudica's demise remains so unclear? The most widely accepted account of Boudica's death comes from the Roman historian Tacitus, who wrote that after her defeat, Boudica poisoned herself. Tacitus, however, does not elaborate further, leaving a wide gap in our understanding of her last days. His account was written years after the events, and the absence of details raises questions. Was Boudica really defeated so thoroughly, both in battle and in spirit, that she chose to end her life? Or did she escape, slipping into the shadows of history, her story too dangerous to be told? The alternative, more speculative theory, comes from the work of Dio Cassius, another Roman historian. Dio suggests that Boudica may have died of illness after her defeat. This theory leaves room for the possibility that Boudica, rather than choosing death in the face of capture, simply succumbed to the pressures of her war and the toll it took on her body. Was the physical strain of leading a campaign against the mighty Romans too much for a woman who, despite her strength and courage, was ultimately only human? Or, as some have suggested, did her death at this point signify the end of a far-reaching struggle for her people, one that still echoes through the centuries? These accounts, however, are not the only versions of her fate. Fringe theories suggest that Boudica did not die at all. Some propose that she fled the battlefield, seeking refuge beyond the Roman Empire's reach, and lived out her days in anonymity. This theory suggests that Boudica, like many historical figures of the time, may have gone underground, possibly with a small group of supporters. The idea that she lived on after the defeat, perhaps in exile, opens up tantalizing possibilities. Was Boudica's defiance so great that she could not be silenced, even by Rome's superior military power? Did she escape into the wilds of Britain or beyond, keeping her identity hidden from the Romans? Such ideas are fueled by the fact that no physical evidence of Boudica's death has ever been found. Unlike other prominent figures of the time, whose graves and remains have been uncovered by archaeologists, Boudica's final resting place remains a mystery. If she had indeed taken her own life, why has her tomb not been found? Or if she died of illness, why does no grave mark the end of her life? Some speculate that, in order to preserve her legend, her followers may have chosen to keep her death a secret, preserving her image as an immortal symbol of resistance. Perhaps the very mystery of her disappearance is part of her enduring power. Another question that arises is whether Boudica's fate was intentionally obscured by Roman authorities. After all, she was a woman who had led a powerful rebellion against the might of Rome, and such acts of defiance were not tolerated by the empire. It is possible that the Romans, in their efforts to maintain control over Britain, decided to erase Boudica's legacy. Was her death, and the mysterious gap in the historical record, part of a deliberate effort to suppress the story of the woman who nearly brought an empire to its knees? Could it be that the truth of her final days was intentionally hidden to prevent the rise of future uprisings? As historians examine the scant records left behind, there is also the issue of Boudica's legacy. What does the lack of definitive information about her death tell us about her place in history? Some argue that it is the mystery surrounding her disappearance that has only enhanced her mythic status. Boudica, as a symbol, has transcended her historical reality, becoming something far greater than a mere queen. Her story has become a beacon of resistance, a reminder of the power of the oppressed to challenge even the mightiest empires. By leaving her end uncertain, history has allowed Boudica to live on as both a figure of triumph and tragedy. Her final fate unknown, her impact unquestionable. The disappearance of Boudica, in a way, mirrors the larger uncertainties surrounding her life and rebellion. We know that she was a force of nature, a woman whose fury was unmatched, who defied the Roman Empire at great personal cost. Yet her ultimate fate, whether she died in defeat, escaped into obscurity, or was erased from history by her enemies, remains an open question. It is this very ambiguity that has kept her story alive for nearly 2,000 years. Perhaps, like the curse tablets or the lost Roman eagle standards, Boudica's fate is not meant to be easily understood. It is perhaps her mystery that continues to speak to us, an enduring reminder that some stories are meant to remain untold, that some figures cannot be confined to the pages of history. As we ponder the fate of this remarkable woman, we are left with a question that may never be answered. In the silence of history, what truths about Boudica's life and death remain hidden, waiting for the day they may be revealed? As we move from the vanished traces of Boudica's rebellion, we step into the realm of an even more elusive mystery, one that stretches across the temples and sanctuaries of ancient civilizations, where light and shadow intertwined in sacred spaces. The eternal lamps, these enigmatic sources of perpetual light, have left behind only whispers of their once glorious presence. Yet the question remains: how were these lamps, which seemed to burn forever, sustained? And why did they hold such a powerful, almost mystical significance in ancient temples? Imagine, if you will, the grand marble pillars of an ancient temple, the air heavy with incense and the murmurs of priests. Inside the temple, amidst the flickering shadows cast by the grand statues of gods, stands a lamp, its flame unwavering, a beacon of divine presence. The light from this lamp has burned for centuries, an eternal flame symbolizing the unbroken bond between the gods and their devotees. In cultures from the Greeks to the Romans, from the Egyptians to the Sumerians, such lamps were seen as sacred objects, vessels that carried the divine light, which could never be extinguished by mortal hands. One of the most famous examples comes from the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. According to ancient sources, the temple was not only a marvel of architecture and scale, but also a place where a mysterious, eternal flame was said to burn. This sacred fire, believed to have been a gift from the goddess Artemis herself, was tended by priests and priestesses, and its light was thought to symbolize Artemis's unyielding protection over her people. Yet despite the importance of this flame, no historical records ever fully explain how such a fire could burn for so long, without the need for refueling, without going out, even in the face of the elements. Was this truly a miracle, or was there something more to the mystery of these eternal flames? The mystery deepens when we look at other temples throughout history. The Egyptians, too, spoke of similar lamps in their monumental tombs and temples. The Pyramid of Djoser, for instance, housed an altar with a flame that was said to burn for eternity, symbolizing the king's journey into the afterlife. The Egyptians were renowned for their mastery of alchemy, but even they left no clear explanation for how such flames were maintained. Ancient historians and archaeologists have long speculated that these flames might have been fueled by some form of hidden technology, lost to time, which allowed these lamps to burn without the need for visible fuel. There are also tantalizing accounts from the Romans, who revered their own set of sacred lights. The famous Vestal Virgins of Rome, keepers of the sacred fire in the Temple of Vesta, tended a flame that was believed to protect the city. Like those of Artemis's temple, this flame was never allowed to go out. The Vestals, who were sworn to chastity and service, would tend to the flame for years, their very existence tied to the eternal burning fire. But what exactly kept the fire going? Was it a secret knowledge, passed down through generations, that allowed these flames to defy the natural laws of combustion? One theory, proposed by some modern historians and scientists, suggests that the eternal flames may have been the result of a highly refined form of oil or resin, substances capable of burning for extended periods without the need for replenishment. The Greeks, Romans, and Egyptians all had access to oils and substances derived from plants or animals, which may have contained rare, potent properties that allowed them to burn at a steady rate for months or even years. But this idea, while plausible, still leaves us with many questions. If such substances existed, why have we not found evidence of them in more recent times? And if these oils were so extraordinary, what was the source of their power? Some more fringe theories suggest that the eternal flames may have been powered by a form of ancient technology, perhaps something akin to modern-day batteries or electrical devices. This idea is supported by the idea that many of these temples were built with remarkable precision, suggesting a level of engineering far beyond what was previously believed to be possible in the ancient world. Could the ancients have discovered a way to harness energy in a form we have yet to understand? Could these lamps have been powered by a form of electricity or chemical reaction that modern science has not yet rediscovered? One theory that gained significant traction in the early 20th century was that the flames were somehow connected to the concept of alchemy. Alchemists in the ancient world were obsessed with the idea of transforming base materials into more precious forms, and many believed that the manipulation of certain substances could unlock hidden powers. Some even suggested that the eternal lamps could have been a result of alchemical processes that allowed these flames to burn indefinitely. However, there is no definitive evidence to support this idea, and the link between alchemy and the lamps remains speculative at best. Perhaps the most profound mystery of the eternal lamps is their symbolic significance. In the ancient world, fire was seen not just as a source of light, but as a conduit to the divine. The act of lighting a flame was often seen as an offering to the gods, a means of communicating with the spiritual world. The eternal flame, therefore, represented more than just a physical light. It was a manifestation of the divine presence itself. The priests and priestesses who tended these flames were seen as intermediaries between the gods and humanity, entrusted with the sacred duty of ensuring that the divine light never went out. In this sense, the lamps were more than just a mystery of ancient engineering. They were central to the religious and cultural life of these civilizations. As we move forward in our investigation, we find that the flame, though seemingly eternal, is itself a symbol of impermanence. The temples that housed these sacred fires have crumbled, the cities have fallen into ruin, and the secrets of the lamps have faded into the shadows of time. What happened to the knowledge that powered these flames? Was it lost in the great upheavals of history, buried beneath the sands of time? Or is there, perhaps, a deeper mystery, a hidden truth, waiting to be uncovered? A secret of the ancient world that we have yet to discover. The question of how the eternal lamps burned and why they held such a prominent place in the temples of the ancient world remains unanswered. Was it divine intervention, alchemical knowledge, or a lost form of technology? Perhaps the answer lies in something we have yet to fully comprehend, an aspect of the ancient world that has slipped from our grasp. As we ponder the mystery of these eternal flames, we are reminded that not all the answers lie within the realm of the known. Some mysteries, whether they are of light, knowledge, or power, remain shrouded in the ancient past, offering only fragmented clues to those willing to search for them. What was it truly that kept these lamps burning for centuries, long after the hands that once tended them were dust? And might there be a hidden connection between these flames and other forgotten technologies or lost knowledge that could one day illuminate the depths of human history? As we step away from the flickering mysteries of the eternal lamps, we now journey into a tale shrouded in uncertainty and political intrigue, a mystery that surrounds the untimely and suspicious death of one of Rome's most enigmatic emperors, Julian the Apostate. His death, though recorded in the annals of history, remains wrapped in ambiguity, and the true circumstances surrounding it continue to provoke debate and speculation among scholars to this day. How did Julian, the emperor who sought to restore paganism in the face of Christianity's growing dominance, meet his end in the midst of his military campaign against the Sassanid Persians? Imagine, if you will, the year is 363 AD. Julian, the last Roman emperor to reject Christianity and strive to restore the ancient Roman religious traditions, marches at the head of his army deep in enemy territory. The Persian Empire, a formidable foe, looms large before him, and the fate of Rome hangs in the balance. Julian, known for his intelligence and ambition, has led his troops through difficult terrain and grueling battles. Yet, despite his careful planning, it is on this very campaign that his life would be cut short. The event took place in a harsh and unforgiving landscape, the scorching desert of Mesopotamia, on the eve of what could have been a decisive victory. Julian's army had fought its way to the heart of the Persian Empire, and yet, in a moment of seeming fate or misfortune, the emperor was struck down by a mysterious wound during a skirmish. He was taken from the battlefield, and rumors of his death spread like wildfire. The official accounts from Roman historians, Notably, the likes of Ammianus Marcellinus offer a glimpse into what transpired, but even they do not provide a clear answer as to how or why Julian died. The question remains: was it an accident, an assassination, or something else entirely? The most commonly accepted explanation is that Julian was mortally wounded by a spear during a battle with the Persians. However, even this simple account is far from straightforward. According to some sources, Julian's injury was caused by a random Persian soldier, striking him during the heat of combat. The injury was said to be severe but not immediately fatal, and Julian was reportedly able to return to camp before succumbing to his wounds. Yet this explanation raises more questions than answers. Julian, a seasoned general, was no stranger to the dangers of battle. How could he, a man who had been involved in numerous campaigns, have been so unexpectedly struck down by a single blow? Was this truly just a matter of unfortunate chance, or was there something more to the story? Adding to the intrigue, there are those who have speculated that Julian's death was not the result of an accident, but rather a carefully orchestrated assassination. The idea that Julian was murdered by someone within his own ranks is a theory that has persisted for centuries, fueled by the political context of the time. Julian had earned the ire of many Christian factions, and his attempts to revive paganism were viewed as a direct threat to the rise of Christianity in the empire. In fact, his death came at a time when his policies were beginning to have a significant impact on the religious landscape of the Roman Empire. Could Julian's death have been the result of a conspiracy orchestrated by those who sought to halt his reforms? If so, who might have had the motive to strike down the emperor, and how might they have been able to do so without arousing suspicion? The possibility of an assassination is further compounded by the fact that Julian's final moments were surrounded by conflicting reports. Ammianus Marcellinus, a contemporary of Julian who had served as an officer in the emperor's army, describes the death in a rather detached manner, offering little in terms of concrete detail. He writes that Julian was struck by a Persian spear, but offers no further explanation for the circumstances of the injury. Moreover, Marcellinus himself seemed to be wary of offering any direct opinions on the matter. Was he, too, aware that the true cause of Julian's death might have been more than just a battlefield accident? Was there something that Marcellinus, a loyal follower of Julian, was reluctant to reveal? The historical sources that describe Julian's death also include subtle hints that suggest there was something more at play. For instance, some accounts suggest that, as Julian lay dying, he uttered a cryptic phrase, "You have won, Galilean," a reference to the Christian faith, which had been rising in influence during his reign. This statement, if true, has led some to speculate that Julian's death was the result of divine retribution for his attempts to undermine Christianity. Was this just the ramblings of a dying man? Or could there be some truth to the idea that Julian's death was the consequence of his struggle against the rise of Christianity? Despite the evidence pointing in various directions, the exact cause of Julian's death remains unclear. The absence of solid forensic evidence, combined with the political tensions of the time, has left us with little more than conjecture. If Julian was indeed assassinated, the question remains as to who could have been behind it. Some have suggested that it may have been the work of Christian conspirators who sought to eliminate the emperor due to his pagan reforms. Others have pointed to figures within Julian's own court, who may have had their own personal reasons for wanting him dead. Could someone within his inner circle have struck a fatal blow to the emperor's reign, seeking to advance their own position in the tumultuous world of Roman politics? Yet, while the theory of an assassination fits the political context of the time, it still cannot fully explain the events surrounding Julian's death. The lack of hard evidence, the conflicting accounts, and the ambiguity surrounding his final moments continue to leave us with more questions than answers. Even in the modern age, where historians have access to far more detailed records, the mystery of Julian's death remains elusive. Some have gone as far as to suggest that the emperor's death could have been a result of supernatural forces, an interpretation that ties into the broader mystical beliefs of the time. Julian's attempts to revive paganism and his open opposition to Christianity may have created a narrative in which his death could be seen as a divine punishment, a retribution for his efforts to turn back the tide of religious change in the empire. However, such theories, while intriguing, lack any concrete historical evidence and remain in the realm of speculation. And so, we are left with a mystery that continues to captivate the imagination. Was Emperor Julian the victim of an unfortunate accident, a political assassination, or divine intervention? The true answer remains hidden in the pages of history, waiting to be uncovered. As we explore the life and death of this complex figure, we are reminded of how the events of the past can be obscured by the passage of time and the layers of politics, religion, and human ambition. What truly happened to Julian in those final moments? And what might we still learn about the forces that shaped his death and the course of history from the shadows that remain? As we step away from the murky depths of Julian's death and its lingering questions, we find ourselves drawn to another mystery, one that stretches across millennia and holds secrets beneath the surface of one of the world's most iconic structures. The Great Pyramid of Giza, an engineering marvel, has stood as a symbol of Egypt's ancient might for thousands of years. Yet, for all that has been revealed about its exterior, its purpose, its dimensions, the labor that built it, what remains hidden within its stone walls continues to captivate and mystify. What lies within the hidden chambers of the Great Pyramid, and could the Romans, at the height of their empire, have known more about its secrets than we realize? Imagine standing at the base of the Great Pyramid. The towering stone blocks rise to a height of over 450 feet, their surface weathered by the ages, yet still radiating a sense of timelessness and power. The wind sweeps across the desert, carrying with it the quiet whispers of ancient knowledge. The pyramid stands, as it has for thousands of years, a monument to a bygone civilization, its true purpose and construction still debated by scholars and explorers alike. Inside, the known chambers, King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, and the Grand Gallery, have all been explored, but there are still unexplored spaces and enigmatic passages that suggest much more remains hidden. The most tantalizing of these mysteries lies in the so-called hidden chambers. These chambers, which have been the subject of speculation for centuries, were largely ignored by historians and archaeologists for much of the early modern period, as attention was focused primarily on the tomb of the pharaoh Khufu. However, as new technologies emerged and our understanding of the pyramid's complex structure deepened, the notion of hidden chambers within the pyramid has resurfaced, an idea that has sparked renewed curiosity and theories. One of the earliest recorded mentions of secret chambers within the pyramid came from the Greek historian Herodotus, who wrote in the 5th century BC. According to Herodotus, the Great Pyramid was not only a tomb, but also a repository of ancient wisdom, and he alluded to a hidden chamber within it. While his accounts were based on second-hand information and can't be taken as definitive, his words planted the seed for later theorists. Herodotus, like many others, was fascinated by the scale and purpose of the pyramid, and the idea of hidden spaces within it was passed down through the ages. In the Roman era, the Great Pyramid of Giza, known as the Pyramid of Cheops to the Romans, continued to intrigue the intellectual minds of the empire. The Romans, whose empire stretched from the sands of Egypt to the far reaches of Britain, had their own theories about the pyramid's purpose. Was it simply a tomb for a powerful pharaoh? Or could it have served other, more esoteric purposes, such as a storehouse for sacred knowledge, or even an energy source? Some Roman-era scholars and engineers were drawn to the pyramid, intrigued not only by its grandeur, but also by the mysteries that seemed to lie within. The Roman historian Pliny the Elder, who was deeply interested in natural history and ancient architecture, wrote extensively about Egypt's monuments. In his Natural History, he spoke of the Great Pyramid and its unique construction, but he did not offer any specific insights into hidden chambers or their purpose. However, Pliny was fascinated by the idea that the ancient Egyptians possessed knowledge far beyond the Romans' understanding of engineering and construction. His work reflects the growing fascination with Egypt in the Roman era, particularly with its hidden knowledge and the possibility that the Great Pyramid could house some kind of arcane secrets. As we move beyond Herodotus and Pliny, we encounter Roman scholars who continued to speculate about the pyramid's hidden features, particularly those that might relate to Egyptian religious practices. Some Roman thinkers posited that the pyramid was a center of learning, a repository of the ancient knowledge that could be accessed only by those initiated into the sacred mysteries of Egypt. The pyramid's alignment with the stars, particularly the constellation of Orion, has long been a source of fascination, leading some to believe that the chambers within the pyramid were meant to align with celestial events or carry symbolic meaning related to the afterlife. It wasn't until the rise of modern archaeology that the pyramid began to be explored with greater rigor. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, explorers began to push beyond the known chambers and passageways. The first major breakthrough came in 1881, when a British engineer, Sir William Flinders Petrie, conducted a series of precise measurements of the Great Pyramid. Petrie's work was instrumental in revealing the true scale of the pyramid's internal structure and its numerous shafts and passages. In the 21st century, new technologies have allowed for even more precise scans of the pyramid. Using techniques like cosmic ray muon tomography, scientists have been able to peer into the structure of the pyramid in ways that were once thought impossible. In 2017, an international team of researchers working on the Scan Pyramids project discovered an unknown cavity deep inside the pyramid. This discovery, which led to the identification of a large hidden void, reignited discussions about the pyramid's internal mysteries. Was this chamber connected to the unknown purposes of the pyramid, or was it simply an unremarkable feature of its construction? The discovery was exciting, but it also raised more questions than answers. What else might be hidden inside the pyramid that we have yet to uncover? Theories surrounding these hidden chambers have taken many forms. Some scholars argue that the chambers were part of a complex system for the pharaoh's afterlife, a kind of sacred blueprint designed to guide the king's soul to the stars. Others believe that these chambers may have had a more practical purpose, serving as storage areas for the treasures that were meant to accompany the pharaoh on his journey to the next life. Yet another theory suggests that the chambers may have had a symbolic function, representing the link between the earthly realm and the divine, a bridge between the physical world and the heavens. However, a more speculative theory that has gained traction over the years is that the chambers within the pyramid may hold something far more profound than mere material objects or religious symbolism. Some believe that the pyramid could contain ancient knowledge that, if unlocked, could change the course of human understanding. Could there be inscriptions, lost scrolls, or other records of a forgotten civilization hidden within these chambers? Or, as some more fringe theorists suggest, could the pyramid have been built to preserve knowledge of ancient technologies, perhaps even advanced engineering or energy sources that were far ahead of their time? What makes the mystery of the Great Pyramid's hidden chambers so captivating is not just the unanswered questions about their contents, but the very idea that there are hidden truths beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered. The pyramid is a symbol of ancient power, but it also represents the limits of our knowledge, a monument to the unknown. As we stand at the edge of this mystery, we are faced with the reality that, despite centuries of exploration, we still know so little about what lies within the pyramid's stone walls. The hidden chambers are a reminder that even in the modern age, there are still secrets from the past that defy our understanding. Could the ancient Egyptians have been the keepers of knowledge so profound that even our most advanced technologies cannot yet comprehend it? Or are the chambers merely a reflection of the pyramid's grandeur, a reminder that some mysteries, no matter how deeply we probe, may never be fully revealed? The Great Pyramid continues to challenge us with its silence, and the chambers within it remain one of the most profound mysteries in human history. What truths lie hidden there, waiting to be uncovered? Only time will tell. After our exploration of the Great Pyramid's hidden secrets, we now turn our attention to a more enigmatic and somewhat elusive chapter of history, one where religion, power, and ritual intertwine. The cult of Sol Invictus, the worship of the unconquered sun, was not just a religion but a political and spiritual force that reverberated through the Roman Empire, leaving behind clues that continue to puzzle historians and archaeologists alike. What secrets did its rituals hold, and how did the worship of this solar deity influence the trajectory of one of history's most powerful empires? Picture, if you will, the heart of ancient Rome during the late 3rd and early 4th centuries A.D. It's a time when the empire is in turmoil, plagued by civil wars, economic instability, and the constant threat of invasion from barbarian tribes. Yet, amidst this chaos, a new religious movement begins to take root, one that claims the sun as its supreme deity. The cult of Sol Invictus was not a new deity in Roman religion. The sun god had been worshipped in various forms long before, but this was something different. Sol Invictus was not simply a solar god. He was a divine symbol of invincibility and eternal power, a beacon of hope in an empire that was struggling to survive. The primary evidence for the cult of Sol Invictus comes from the reign of Emperor Aurelian, who, in 274 AD, formally recognized Sol Invictus as the official god of the Roman Empire. To celebrate this, Aurelian built a grand temple to Sol Invictus in Rome, dedicated to the sun god's honor. This temple, located near the Circus Maximus, was said to be a magnificent structure, adorned with statues and dedicated to the worship of a god who was seen as the source of strength for the Roman Empire. The festival of Sol Invictus, which took place on December 25th, marked the winter solstice, the day when the sun began its slow return to the sky, symbolizing rebirth and renewal. For the Romans, this was a day of immense spiritual significance, reflecting not only the restoration of the sun, but also the restoration of the empire itself. The rituals surrounding Sol Invictus were complex, yet they were designed to both unite and fortify the empire. The emperor, seen as the living representative of the divine, would perform sacrifices and other religious rites to honor the sun god. These rituals were carried out with great pageantry and solemnity, often involving elaborate processions, feasts, and prayers. The emperor's role was not merely that of a political leader, but as the spiritual intermediary between the gods and the people, tasked with ensuring the favor of Sol Invictus for the prosperity and security of the empire. One of the most mysterious aspects of the cult of Sol Invictus is the shadowy figure of the high priest of Sol Invictus. While the emperor played a central role in the worship, the high priest was believed to hold a significant position in the religious hierarchy, one that allowed him access to the innermost sanctuaries of the temple. The exact nature of the priestly duties and the inner workings of the rituals remain largely speculative, as historical records about the specifics of these rites are sparse. What we do know is that the high priest was often chosen from among the elite of Roman society, and his role was considered one of great prestige. Yet, despite this, the details of the ceremonies and rituals that he oversaw remain shrouded in mystery. The connection between Sol Invictus and imperial power goes beyond mere symbolism. The worship of the sun god was a tool of political legitimacy. By aligning themselves with Sol Invictus, emperors could present themselves as divinely sanctioned rulers, chosen by the sun god to lead the empire. This had significant ramifications during times of political unrest, when the legitimacy of rulers was often questioned. Through the powerful imagery of the sun, which was seen as unchanging and eternal, emperors could bolster their authority and solidify their rule. The emperor's divine connection to the sun god was reinforced through public spectacles, such as games and sacrifices, which would remind the people of Rome of their ruler's divine favor. The idea of an emperor's divinity also touched upon broader themes of imperial cults, where various gods were associated with the emperor's reign. The cult of Sol Invictus stands as a testament to this growing trend in the late Roman Empire, where the emperor's role as a divine figure became increasingly important. In fact, it is worth noting that the emperor's divinity was closely tied to the idea of a celestial ruler who could maintain the empire's strength. This connection to the divine also contributed to the later Christianization of the empire. The idea of the Sol Invictus, the invincible sun, may have influenced the development of Christian symbolism, especially in its association with the birth of Christ, who was often portrayed as the light of the world. Yet, while the cult of Sol Invictus undeniably shaped the spiritual and political landscape of the Roman Empire, questions remain about the deeper meanings of its rituals. Were these ceremonies merely a form of political propaganda, or did they hold a more profound spiritual significance for those who participated in them? Some scholars have suggested that the worship of Sol Invictus was part of a broader trend in Roman religion to seek personal immortality through divine favor. The sun, as a symbol of life and renewal, may have been seen as a source of cosmic energy that could potentially provide eternal life to those who adhered to the faith. But if this was the case, why did the religion fade into obscurity after the rise of Christianity? The eventual decline of the cult of Sol Invictus remains one of its most intriguing aspects. By the time of Emperor Constantine, who converted to Christianity and made it the state religion of the Roman Empire, the cult of Sol Invictus began to lose its importance. Constantine himself, who had long been associated with the sun god and had adopted the title Sol Invictus as part of his imperial imagery, eventually abandoned the cult in favor of Christianity. Yet, it is curious that the exact relationship between the sun god and the emergence of Christianity has never been fully explored. Was the cult of Sol Invictus merely a precursor to the rise of Christian thought? Did the idea of the sun as a divine source of light shape the way that early Christians viewed Christ as the light of the world? These are questions that remain largely unanswered. Despite the fading of Sol Invictus as an official cult, the influence of its rituals and symbolism continues to resonate. The festival of Sol Invictus, celebrated on December 25th, would go on to be absorbed into Christian tradition as the celebration of Christ's birth, a curious example of how the rituals of an ancient cult can shape the practices of a new faith. In this way, the cult of Sol Invictus might not have disappeared entirely, but rather evolved and found a new life within the Christian tradition. But the mystery of the cult of Sol Invictus is far from resolved. Were the rituals truly just political theater designed to cement imperial power, or did they possess a deeper, more profound meaning for the people who participated in them? What knowledge, if any, was passed down through the secretive priesthood, and how did their influence persist in the shifting religious landscape of the Roman Empire? These are questions that continue to elude us. Perhaps the greatest mystery lies in the fact that, even as we uncover the stories of ancient rites, much of their true significance remains hidden in the shadows of history. The cult of Sol Invictus was a product of its time, an empire seeking stability and divine favor in an uncertain world. But what was it about the sun god that so captivated the Romans, and why did they place such importance on his worship? As we continue to explore the mysteries of ancient rituals, we are left to wonder what deeper truths lie buried beneath the layers of history, waiting to be uncovered. As we leave behind the bright, radiant mystery of the cult of Sol Invictus, We now step into the dim, shadowed world of one of the most enigmatic objects in history, the Voynich manuscript. This cryptic book, its origins as elusive as its meaning, has baffled scholars, cryptographers, and historians for centuries. Written in an indecipherable script and filled with bizarre illustrations of plants, astronomical symbols, and naked figures performing strange rituals, the Voynich manuscript raises more questions than it answers. Where did it come from, and what hidden knowledge does it contain? The manuscript itself is a tactile enigma. Its pages are made of fine parchment, aged and fragile, but their contents are anything but ordinary. Imagine holding this ancient volume in your hands. The yellowed edges of the paper, the strange script curling across the pages like an alien language, and the vivid, almost surreal illustrations that fill its margins. Some of the plants depicted within the manuscript seem to exist only in the imagination. No known species match the bizarre flora shown. Figures in the book are often shown in poses that suggest ritual or practice, yet the meaning of these acts remains unclear. The manuscript first appeared in the early 15th century, and its most famous owner was the Polish-born nobleman Wilfrid Voynich, who purchased it in 1912 from the Jesuit college in Rome. While the manuscript had existed for centuries before that, the centuries-long gap between its creation and its reappearance in the modern era has only added to its mystery. What makes the manuscript particularly perplexing is that, despite countless attempts, no one has ever been able to decipher the language it is written in. Some of the greatest minds, from renowned cryptographers during World War II to linguists and computer scientists in the present day, have all failed to crack the code. It seems almost as if the manuscript itself is purposefully eluding understanding. Theories about the origins of the manuscript vary widely, and each potential answer only adds to the air of mystery that surrounds it. The prevailing theory for many years was that the manuscript was a hoax, a creation designed to deceive and mystify. Some speculated that it was a medieval prank, a clever work of fiction that was never meant to be understood. Yet, modern tests have shown that the manuscript's parchment and ink are authentic to the 15th century, eliminating the possibility of a modern forgery. So, if it wasn't a hoax, then what was its purpose? The most widely accepted theory suggests that the manuscript was created as a sort of medical or botanical guide. After all, several of the strange plants depicted in the book bear a resemblance to known species, though none match them exactly. Some even speculate that the manuscript could have been an ancient herbal, a work created by an alchemist or healer designed to record a forgotten language of plant lore and healing practices. Yet, the lack of any obvious structure or reference to existing knowledge makes this theory difficult to accept fully. The writing appears so foreign and unconnected to anything we know, suggesting that it might not simply be a collection of botanical knowledge, but a far more cryptic work. Other theories are more speculative. Some have suggested that the Voynich manuscript is a product of an ancient civilization, perhaps lost to time. Could it be that this manuscript is a relic of a culture whose language and knowledge we have long since forgotten? The illustrations within the manuscript, particularly the depictions of celestial bodies and the unexplainable plant life, have led some to wonder if the manuscript might contain the knowledge of an ancient people whose existence was wiped out, either by natural disaster or conquest. There is also the possibility that the manuscript was the work of an unknown genius, a cryptographer or scholar whose code was so advanced that it remains beyond our comprehension today. Could the manuscript be a coded treasure map, a work of esoteric knowledge, or even a key to unlocking a hidden truth about the universe? Some fringe theorists have suggested that the manuscript holds the secrets of an advanced, lost civilization that possessed knowledge far ahead of its time. Could it be a guide to forgotten scientific principles, offering us a glimpse of technologies that were lost to history? Or perhaps it holds religious or philosophical texts, meant to be understood only by those initiated into its mysteries? One of the most compelling, but also unsettling possibilities is that the Voynich manuscript is a product of an ancient, perhaps otherworldly influence. Some have speculated that the manuscript's unique script and bizarre content could point to a source beyond our understanding of ancient human culture. Did the manuscript originate from a culture or civilization that is not of this earth? The thought that the Voynich manuscript might be evidence of contact with extraterrestrial beings or forces is, of course, highly controversial, but it has not stopped some from proposing such a radical theory. What if the illustrations of strange plants and mystical symbols represent knowledge from another world, a knowledge that was passed down to humanity long before recorded history began? The astronomical depictions within the manuscript are particularly interesting. One of the more striking features of the manuscript is its focus on celestial bodies, including representations of stars, the moon, and constellations. These illustrations suggest that the manuscript may have had an astronomical or astrological purpose, offering clues about the position of the stars and the movements of the heavens. Some scholars have even argued that the manuscript's strange text could be a form of cosmic language, one that describes the workings of the universe in a way that we simply cannot comprehend. While no definitive explanation has ever been found, modern technology has helped to bring us closer to understanding the manuscript's origins. In recent years, scholars have used advanced imaging techniques to study the book in unprecedented detail. High-resolution scans and digital analyses have revealed features of the manuscript that were previously invisible to the naked eye, such as hidden patterns in the script and illustrations. Some believe that these patterns may hold the key to unlocking the manuscript's secrets. Could there be a mathematical or linguistic code embedded within its pages? And if so, does it point to an ancient, forgotten knowledge? Or is it simply the work of a brilliant but obscure author? The ongoing debate surrounding the Voynich manuscript is not just about its origins, but about the nature of knowledge itself. What is it that makes this text so resistant to understanding? Why, after centuries of study, do we still find ourselves unable to crack its code? The manuscript's existence challenges our assumptions about language, communication, and the very limits of human knowledge. The manuscript is, in many ways, a mirror, a reflection of our own curiosity and the limits of our understanding. Its pages remain a blank slate for anyone who dares to imagine what secrets might lie within. As much as we have learned from its strange imagery and cryptic script, the manuscript continues to hold its secrets close, as if it were daring us to unlock them. What is the Voynich manuscript? Is it simply an elaborate hoax? Or is it a genuine artifact from a lost civilization? Does it hold a hidden language, a secret code that has been buried for centuries? Or does it contain knowledge that, for reasons unknown, we are not meant to understand? For now, the manuscript remains a tantalizing riddle, its origins and purpose still shrouded in mystery. And perhaps, as we continue to probe its depths, we will uncover new clues, but the ultimate truth about the Voynich manuscript may be one of the greatest mysteries of all. As we leave behind the cryptic allure of the Voynich manuscript, we now find ourselves diving deeper into one of the most captivating and enduring mysteries in the annals of ancient thought, the lost city of Atlantis. For centuries, the location of this fabled civilization has eluded scholars, adventurers, and dreamers. But what is often overlooked is the way in which Atlantis was perceived, interpreted, and reimagined by the Romans, a civilization that, by the time of its greatest expansion, was already well versed in myth, geography, and the legends of ancient cultures. What role did Atlantis play in the Roman imagination, and how did they interpret the lost world of Plato's story? The legend of Atlantis first emerges in the works of the Greek philosopher Plato, who, in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, describes a powerful, highly advanced civilization that existed thousands of years before his time. According to Plato, Atlantis was an island located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, modern-day Gibraltar, a place of incredible wealth, technology, and sophistication. However, due to its moral corruption, Atlantis eventually met its downfall, sinking into the ocean in a single day and night of catastrophic events. This tale has since captivated thinkers, historians, and explorers who have all sought to uncover the truth behind Plato's words. While the story of Atlantis originates in Greek thought, it was the Romans who would take the concept of this lost civilization and turn it into a lasting cultural and philosophical curiosity. By the 1st century BC, the story of Atlantis had already begun to percolate through Roman literature and was adapted to fit the unique worldview of a civilization deeply entrenched in empire building and the mythologies of their predecessors. For the Romans, the notion of Atlantis was both an alluring mystery and a cautionary tale, one that raised profound questions about power, hubris, and the fragility of civilizations. To understand how the Romans viewed Atlantis, we must first consider their approach to mythology and history. The Romans were meticulous in recording their own history, often placing themselves at the center of the known world. Yet, they were equally fascinated by the stories of the civilizations that came before them, the Greeks, Egyptians, and even the ancient Mesopotamians. Their interest in Atlantis was not just about the idea of a lost, advanced civilization, but also about what this story symbolized in relation to their own empire. Could they, too, learn from the fall of Atlantis, avoiding the same fate that befell this once mighty civilization? One of the earliest Roman writers to engage with the story of Atlantis was the philosopher and statesman Cicero. In his work, De Natura Deorum, on the nature of the gods, Cicero references the tale of Atlantis, though he does so in a somewhat dismissive manner, treating it more as a piece of myth than a serious historical account. For Cicero, the story of Atlantis was simply a part of a broader tradition of legendary stories that served as moral lessons rather than factual truths. In his view, the idea of an advanced civilization lost to the sea was just another allegory about the dangers of overreach and hubris. Yet, not all Roman thinkers shared Cicero's skepticism. The poet Ovid, for example, in his Metamorphoses, reflects a more nuanced understanding of Atlantis. Ovid doesn't just treat the story as a fable, but seems to suggest that there might be some grain of truth to it. The disappearance of Atlantis, he writes, may have been a result of divine wrath, a divine judgment that echoes through the ages as a warning to the Romans. In Ovid's retelling, Atlantis becomes more than just a cautionary tale. It serves as a reminder of the fragility of even the greatest civilizations and the ever-present threat of divine intervention. But it wasn't just philosophical musings that occupied the Roman imagination regarding Atlantis. There were also more tangible efforts to locate the lost island. The Roman scholar and geographer Pomponius Mela, writing in the 1st century AD, is one of the earliest to suggest that Atlantis might have been located somewhere beyond the Mediterranean. In his De Chorographia, Mela posits that the island of Atlantis lay somewhere to the west of the known world, in the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. However, his theory was speculative at best, and he was careful not to present Atlantis as a reality to be found, but rather as a myth with geographical roots. Mela's work was indicative of a broader Roman fascination with mapping the world, exploring the limits of their empire, and piecing together the geographical knowledge of past civilizations. However, it was the Roman Emperor Hadrian, who ruled from 117 to 138 AD, who would leave the most lasting influence on the Roman perspective of Atlantis. Hadrian was known for his great interest in ancient cultures, and he personally funded many archaeological expeditions across the empire, seeking to uncover the truths behind ancient myths. Hadrian's interest in Atlantis seems to have been more philosophical than geographical, He sought to understand what Atlantis represented, how the Greeks had viewed it, and why it was so compelling to the human imagination. Hadrian's influence was profound because, for the first time in Roman history, a leader who was deeply engaged in the cultural and philosophical legacies of past civilizations openly embraced the idea of Atlantis. He viewed the fall of the civilization as a powerful parable, one that spoke to the rise and fall of all great empires. The lessons of Atlantis were seen as especially relevant during Hadrian's reign, as the empire was experiencing a period of relative peace and prosperity, but the future was uncertain. Hadrian's reign would later be seen as the peak of Roman imperialism, but his fascination with Atlantis hints at an underlying anxiety that was shared by many rulers of the time. Hadrian's commitment to learning from the past suggests that he saw Atlantis not just as a lost place, but as a symbol of the vulnerability of the Roman Empire. The Roman interpretation of Atlantis was far more than just a geographical puzzle. It was a philosophical and moral one. What did Atlantis represent for the Romans? Was it a metaphor for the dangers of overreach and the corrupting influence of power? Or was it a tangible place waiting to be rediscovered? Some Roman thinkers, such as the philosopher Seneca, speculated that Atlantis may have been an allegory of an ancient utopia, a society that had reached the height of civilization but ultimately failed due to moral decay. In Seneca's view, Atlantis was a cautionary tale, urging Rome to remain virtuous, humble, and steadfast in its pursuit of justice and stability. As we continue to probe the mystery of Atlantis, it is important to recognize that the Romans, in their unique blend of mythological reverence and empirical curiosity, were among the first to transform the myth into a symbol of philosophical and political inquiry. The location of Atlantis may have remained a mystery, but its role in Roman thought was clear. It was a mirror reflecting the greatness and the fragility of civilizations, an eternal reminder that no empire, no matter how powerful, is beyond the reach of time's erosion. So, what did the Romans believe Atlantis truly was? Was it a mythological land, lost to the sea, or was it a symbol of their own empire's inevitable decline? In their search for Atlantis, the Romans revealed more about their own values, their fears, and their ambitions than about the geographical mysteries of the ancient world. And perhaps, as we continue to examine their interpretations, we too may uncover not just the secrets of Atlantis, but the deeper meanings behind the myth that continues to captivate us all. As we transition from the far reaches of lost civilizations, we now find ourselves in the land of the pharaohs, ancient Egypt, where the sands of time conceal some of the most puzzling mysteries in human history. One of the most curious among these is the case of the Colossi of Memnon, two massive statues standing proudly near the ruins of the ancient city of Thebes, near the modern-day town of Luxor. Though these towering monuments to King Amenhotep III have withstood millennia of erosion, political upheaval, and archaeological exploration, one feature of the statues continues to elude a satisfactory explanation: the strange musical sounds that emanated from them each morning, a phenomenon that puzzled ancient Greeks and continues to intrigue scholars today. The Colossi of Memnon were originally part of a vast mortuary temple built by Amenhotep III around 1386 BC. These statues, each measuring over 18 meters tall, were constructed to represent the king himself. They were meant to stand as sentinels at the entrance of his temple, a place dedicated to ensuring his continued existence in the afterlife. The statues are carved from blocks of quartzite sandstone, a material that gives them a unique, almost ethereal presence when the light catches their surfaces just right. The grandeur of these statues is enough to leave one awestruck, yet it is the phenomenon surrounding them that has captured the imagination of many. As early as the 1st century BC, travelers began to report strange sounds emanating from the statues at dawn. The Greek historian Strabo wrote of the phenomenon in his geography, noting that the southern statue would make a musical sound each morning, which was described as a creaking or moaning noise. Strabo was not alone in his observation. The Roman poet Lucius Apuleius also mentions these noises in his writings, describing how the colossi would sing with a voice so remarkable that it was believed to carry divine significance. These sounds became so famous that people traveled from all over the Roman Empire to hear them. Some saw them as a sign of divine favor, others as a warning or omen, but no one could explain their origin. The phenomenon was so well known that it even became part of the legends surrounding the statues. Over time, the colossi of Memnon became associated with the myth of the hero Memnon, the son of Eos, the dawn goddess. According to Greek mythology, Memnon was a warrior who fought in the Trojan War and was killed by Achilles. In the myth, Memnon's mother, Eos, was so overcome with grief that she wept for him endlessly, and her tears became the dew of the morning. The colossi, it was said, were meant to represent the mourning figure of Memnon, and their sounds were interpreted as his mother's sorrowful lament for her lost son. This myth is powerful, but it is important to recognize that the true cause of the sounds remained an enigma. The colossi remained silent for centuries, their eerie music falling into history as little more than a memory. But then, in the early 19th century, the phenomenon resurfaced, reigniting interest in the statues. In 1817, the British explorer and archaeologist Giovanni Belzoni visited Thebes and was one of the first to investigate the source of the sound. Belzoni discovered that the cause of the singing was not divine or supernatural, but was, in fact, the result of physical processes at work in the statues themselves. The colossi are made of sandstone, a porous material that can absorb moisture. Over time, changes in temperature, humidity, and pressure could cause the statues to expand and contract, leading to the sounds that had so mystified earlier generations. In particular, the statue on the southern side, the one that was reported to make the loudest noises, had developed a crack that extended from its base to the crown. When the temperature and humidity conditions were just right, the statue's movements could produce a variety of sounds, ranging from creaking to moaning or even high-pitched tones. The mysterious singing was not a voice, but rather the result of the natural forces at play in the stone. This explanation, while satisfying on the surface, still leaves many questions unanswered. Why, for example, did the sound occur only in the morning, just as the sun was rising? Was it simply a coincidence that the phenomenon seemed to coincide with the arrival of daylight? Or was there something more symbolic about it? Could it be that the phenomenon had a deeper, more spiritual meaning for the people of ancient Egypt, beyond the purely physical explanations provided by modern science? Furthermore, why did the colossi of Memnon seem to sing more frequently after the statue was damaged by an earthquake in the 27 BC? The legend surrounding the singing statues persisted even after the damage was done, suggesting that the sounds had a cultural resonance far beyond their physical cause. Some theorists have speculated that the phenomenon was part of an elaborate ritual, or that the colossi were purposefully designed to create a sound as a form of communication with the divine. In ancient Egypt, the use of sound in religious practice was significant. Temples were often constructed with acoustics in mind, and the sounds of the environment were thought to carry sacred power. Could the colossi of Memnon have been built with the intent to resonate with cosmic forces, amplifying the voice of the king in the afterlife? In addition to these questions, there is the intriguing matter of the connection between the sounds and the physical environment. Ancient Egyptian builders were known for their remarkable architectural feats, but did they also have knowledge of acoustics? Could they have intentionally designed the statues with certain features, cracks, fissures, or voids, that would cause them to produce sound under specific conditions? This is a question that has yet to be fully answered, as the true intent behind the design of the statues remains a matter of speculation. Moreover, the idea of the Colossi of Memnon having a symbolic connection to death and the afterlife is compelling. The idea that the singing of the statues was a divine communication with the spirits of the deceased, or a message from the gods, would not have been unusual in ancient Egypt, where the transition to the afterlife was a major focus of religious thought. If the statues were, as the Egyptians believed, a conduit for the deceased king's spirit, could the sounds have been an expression of his eternal presence, a message to those who came to witness his immortality? Even more enigmatic is the role that the Colossi of Memnon played in the lives of the people who visited them. In antiquity, pilgrims and tourists would travel to hear the sound, often leaving offerings or making prayers at the statue's feet. Did the sound serve as a kind of spiritual validation, affirming the divine connection between the living and the gods? It is tempting to believe that the sounds were seen not as a mere curiosity, but as a ritual act, an event that had a deep, mysterious significance to those who sought the blessings of the gods. As we reflect on the strange case of the Colossi of Memnon, we are left with as many questions as answers. While modern science has given us a clear explanation of the physical phenomenon that caused the sounds, the deeper meaning of the singing statues remains elusive. What role did they play in the spiritual and cultural life of ancient Egypt? Were they part of a larger system of divine communication, or was their song a simple quirk of nature that over time became imbued with meaning? The answers, it seems, are buried in the shifting sands of history, waiting for us to listen closely and uncover the secrets that still echo from the past. As we journey deeper into the enigmatic world of ancient engineering, we come to a remarkable mystery that continues to challenge our understanding of both Roman ingenuity and the durability of their constructions. Roman concrete, a material that helped shape the empire's iconic infrastructure, is still standing strong today, even after millennia of exposure to the elements. The Pantheon, the aqueducts, the harbors of Ostia, these monuments, built from this seemingly humble material, continue to outlast many of their modern counterparts. But what truly lies behind the longevity of Roman concrete? How did the Romans, over 2,000 years ago, create a substance that modern science still struggles to replicate? One of the most compelling examples of Roman concrete's enduring strength is the ancient port city of Ostia. Just outside Rome, the port was once the gateway to the empire, a bustling hub of commerce and trade. Today, the remains of its harbors and buildings are a testament to the lasting power of Roman engineering. Among the ruins, fragments of concrete still stand proudly, unyielding against the ravages of time. The most striking feature of these structures is their resistance to decay, even in the face of the harshest elements, such as salt water, which has long been known to degrade modern concrete. This strange durability has puzzled researchers for years. Modern concrete, while strong and versatile, is notorious for its vulnerability to cracking and erosion, particularly in marine environments. The Roman version, however, has shown an uncanny ability to resist such damage. In fact, certain Roman concrete structures have endured for over 2 millennia, standing as an almost eerie reminder of a bygone era. How did the Romans, without the technology we possess today, manage to create such a durable material? The secret to Roman concrete's longevity lies not in the raw materials alone, but in the way they were combined. Roman concrete, known as opus caementitium, was made by mixing volcanic ash, lime, calcium oxide, and seawater to create a mixture that would eventually harden over time. The volcanic ash, specifically from the region around Mount Vesuvius, played a critical role in the concrete's extraordinary resilience. The combination of ash and lime created a reaction that produced minerals such as calcium aluminum silicate hydrate, which helped to form a durable and stable structure. For years, Researchers believed that this mix was simply a random discovery, a stroke of ancient trial and error. However, more recent studies have uncovered a fascinating aspect of the material's composition. A 2017 study, led by scientists from the University of Utah, found that the inclusion of volcanic ash mixed with seawater caused a unique chemical reaction in Roman concrete that made it even stronger over time. Unlike modern concrete, which relies on a chemical process that eventually weakens, the Roman version continued to form new minerals within its structure, essentially healing cracks and reinforcing itself. What's more, Roman concrete actually became more durable when exposed to seawater, rather than less. While modern concrete begins to degrade when it comes into contact with salty water, Roman concrete's interaction with seawater helped it to strengthen, allowing structures like piers, docks, and harbors to survive the relentless battering of the ocean for centuries. This discovery has left many researchers asking, did the Romans know something about material science that we've only just begun to understand? One theory posits that the Romans deliberately selected volcanic ash for its unique properties, fully aware that its inclusion in the concrete would create a chemical reaction that enhanced its durability. The use of ash from specific regions, such as the area around Mount Vesuvius, suggests that Roman engineers were not simply using materials at random. They may have understood the mineralogy of volcanic ash and its potential to bond with the other ingredients in their concrete, even if they didn't have the language or science to describe it as we do today. However, the mystery deepens when we consider the scale of the Romans' use of this material. They didn't just use Roman concrete for small projects. They used it to build entire cities, monumental structures, and, most impressively, vast networks of harbors. The engineering expertise required to use concrete on such a grand scale is astonishing, and yet, the Romans had a remarkable consistency in their ability to create long-lasting structures that were durable and functional, despite the unpredictability of the materials they worked with. To this day, no modern concrete can match the resilience of its ancient counterpart. Researchers have attempted to replicate the process by using similar raw materials, but the results have been less than impressive. Some suggest that the key to Roman concrete's strength lies not only in the material itself, but in the way it was crafted and processed. Roman concrete was mixed by hand, and the process itself may have involved a level of craftsmanship and precision that is simply not replicable in the modern industrial age. This brings us to another question. Why was this technology lost? How is it that the Romans could master a method of creating such a durable material, yet the knowledge disappeared after the fall of the empire? Some believe that the loss of the formula for Roman concrete was a direct result of the collapse of the Roman Empire, with the associated decline in craftsmanship and scientific knowledge. As the empire fractured, so too did the transmission of knowledge, leaving the secrets of Roman concrete buried in the annals of history. Perhaps more curious still is the fact that, even though the Romans left behind detailed records of their construction techniques and materials, there is no comprehensive manual or guide that explains the exact processes they used to make their concrete. While we have descriptions of their buildings and structures, the specific methods for creating their concrete mix are less clear. It's possible that the knowledge was passed down through an informal, almost secretive tradition of master builders, rather than through written documentation. Could this lost knowledge be hiding in plain sight, waiting to be rediscovered? And yet, even with all the research and technological advancements we've made in the centuries since the fall of Rome, we still find ourselves scratching our heads over the true nature of Roman concrete. In many ways, it seems as though the material itself holds secrets that continue to elude our grasp. Were the Romans unknowingly crafting a supermaterial, or did they intentionally discover something beyond their time, only to see it lost to history? In the end, the mystery of Roman concrete's longevity might not be fully solved. It's possible that the process they used is forever shrouded in uncertainty, buried beneath layers of time and empire. But the question remains, how did they do it? Could there be something in the structure of Roman concrete that we haven't yet discovered? Something beyond the ingredients and the process we already know? The enduring strength of Roman concrete is more than just a testament to ancient engineering. It's a reminder that some mysteries, no matter how much we investigate, remain unsolved. As we look at the remaining fragments of Roman infrastructure, we might wonder, what other lost secrets of the past could be hiding in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered by the next generation of explorers and scientists? What could be lost in history that we have yet to rediscover, and what mysteries remain beyond our understanding, just out of reach? In the small rural village of Woolpit, nestled in the Suffolk countryside of England, there exists a tale that has intrigued and mystified both historians and folklore enthusiasts for centuries. It is a story as peculiar as it is unsettling, a tale of two children, strange, green-skinned children, who appeared in the village one summer day in the 12th century. Their appearance, behavior, and origins remain shrouded in mystery, raising more questions than answers. The year was 1150, and the villagers of Woolpit were going about their daily lives, working the land and tending to their animals, when two children, brother and sister, emerged from the dense woods surrounding the village. The children were unlike any others the villagers had ever seen. Their skin was a vivid green, and they spoke a language that no one could understand. They wore strange, unfamiliar clothes and appeared confused and frightened, as though they had wandered out of an entirely different world. When the children were brought to the village, they were taken in by a local family who provided them with food and shelter. The children, however, refused to eat the food given to them, and instead only seemed to consume raw beans. Over time, as the children grew more accustomed to their new environment, they began to learn the language of the villagers, and their strange story began to unfold. The boy, who was the younger of the two, eventually fell ill and died, while the girl, who survived, grew into a young woman and adapted to her new life. She explained to the villagers that she and her brother came from a place called St. Martin's Land, a mysterious realm that lay somewhere beyond the human world. According to the girl, the land of St. Martin was bathed in perpetual twilight, with no sun to speak of. The children, she claimed, had accidentally wandered into this world, finding themselves lost and confused in the woods before being discovered by the villagers. While the girl's account seemed implausible, the mystery of the green children's origins has never been fully explained. Was it a case of two lost children who simply appeared disoriented after an inexplicable journey? Or was there something more to this strange tale? An encounter with something beyond the bounds of the known world? Over time, the legend of the green children of Woolpit has become a part of England's folklore, and the story has been retold in countless variations, each offering a different explanation for their strange appearance and origins. The most common explanation for the children's green skin has been the suggestion that they suffered from a rare condition called chlorosis, which causes the skin to take on a greenish tint. This condition, often linked to anemia or malnutrition, could explain their unusual skin color, as well as their strange eating habits, such as their apparent preference for raw beans. However, this medical explanation doesn't account for the more perplexing elements of the story, such as their claim of coming from a land of perpetual twilight, nor their sudden appearance in Woolpit. Others have speculated that the green children may have been the victims of some kind of psychological or cultural misunderstanding. Perhaps they were from a neighboring village or region, and their appearance was merely the result of an unusual form of dress or some cultural practice that seemed foreign to the people of Woolpit. Their green skin, some have argued, could have been the result of body paint or some other form of body modification common to their people. However, this theory also falls short when considering the children's own story of coming from a distant, unfamiliar land, as well as the subsequent supernatural elements of their tale. Another intriguing possibility lies in the realm of the supernatural. Some versions of the tale suggest that the children were not of human origin at all. Perhaps they were fairies or beings from another world, drawn into our own for reasons unknown. The description of St. Martin's Land, with its dim twilight and strange atmosphere, evokes comparisons to the fairy realms of Celtic mythology, where time and space operate differently from our own world. In this context, the Green Children might have been inhabitants of such a realm, inexplicably transported to Woolpit due to some unknown cosmic event, or perhaps as a form of punishment or banishment. The timing of the Green Children's appearance in Woolpit, too, adds another layer of mystery to their story. The 12th century was a time of great upheaval in England, marked by conflict, war, and political strife. Could their sudden arrival have been a symbolic reflection of the turbulence of the times? Were they perhaps a manifestation of the fears and anxieties of a medieval population facing uncertainty in the face of religious and political change? Beyond these theories, there is the curious aspect of the children's behavior and their continued survival. It is said that after the death of her brother, the girl adapted to life in Woolpit, marrying and starting a family of her own. However, some versions of the story claim that she eventually disappeared, vanishing as mysteriously as she had arrived. What became of her? Was she simply another lost soul trying to find a place in a strange new world? Or was there something more enigmatic at play, something that the villagers, and even we, are not meant to understand? Over the centuries, numerous theories have emerged to explain the strange case of the Green Children, each offering a different perspective on the events that unfolded in Woolpit. Some scholars have suggested that the children's origins may lie in a forgotten part of history, possibly linked to a lost civilization or an undiscovered tribe. Others have posited that the story is a product of medieval folklore, a tale created to explain an otherwise inexplicable event. Perhaps it is a case of a strange historical occurrence that was later mythologized, with the green skin being a metaphor for something deeper, an exploration of the unknown, of what exists beyond the veil of human understanding. But even with all the theories, one thing remains certain. The mystery of the Green Children of Woolpit has never been solved, and their origins remain hidden. The strange tale of these green-skinned children continues to captivate the imagination, even in the modern age. Were they simply victims of misinterpretation, or did they truly come from a place beyond our world? Could the Green Children have been a manifestation of something supernatural, something that defies explanation even today? As we look back on this ancient enigma, we are left to wonder, what secrets might still lie buried in the depths of history, waiting to be uncovered? What truths, hidden from view, remain just out of reach, tantalizing us with their mysteries? The answer, it seems, is lost to time, but the story remains a testament to the enduring power of the unknown. The Green Children of Woolpit continue to fascinate and perplex, reminding us that some mysteries may never be fully explained, and perhaps that is what makes them all the more captivating.